Welcome to the Bridge of Two podcast. Welcome to the Bridge of Two podcast, ladies
What are
and
you
gentlemen.
doing?
What?
50th, what are we at? How many episodes are we at now?
45? I think this is going to be 45 or 46.
45, and that is the first time you have counted us down to open the show.
You know, we got to grow and
Adapt and overcome.
adapt and overcome. Yeah, that
You gotta incorporate new elements.
exactly.
Absolutely. Like Josh counting down with his fingers.
Keep you on your toes.
You gotta keep me on
And
my toes.
you're already on your toes enough, but now you're more on your toes.
Now you're just floating.
That's how I naturally sit, on my toes.
So we are here, and we have Alex on. Our
Hello,
friend
hello.
Alex. He is our resident sequel expert.
Don't gas
Or
me up like that.
we'll find out today if he is.
Put his sequel knowledge to
You
the
will.
test. He had a suggestion for a topic, and he's a buddy of ours, and so we thought it'd be fun to have him on and talk about sequels. So we're gonna do our normal opening here, where we're gonna talk about what we've been up to, sci-fi, fantasy related, and then we'll do our drink break, and then we'll get to the topic.
Hopefully
the
our drink is good,
sequels.
because I found something random.
I'm excited.
It can only be good if it's random.
I almost got something that was like 12% alcohol.
Oh, you
I was
hope
like,
it tastes good.
I was like, oh, this is a lightweight.
Yeah, I think, I don't think you want me to do that if you want me to contribute meaningfully.
Oh, wait.
to this.
It's what?
I was going to guess something that was like 12% alcohol. This one's only like 9.
I'm a lightweight, too.
This one's only
Yeah.
This one's only 9.5%.
It's a blessing and a curse.
Yes, yeah.
This one's only
one and done
9.5
pretty much
though,
for me.
so we'll be all right.
Sweet. So, I started last time. So, Jeremiah, will you do the honors of telling us what you've been getting into sci-fi and fantasy this week?
Sure, a couple of different things. I started a new book.
Gasp. Shocked.
I didn't finish my last book though that I was reading.
Uh-oh, is it a DNF? Did not finish?
For now, it's a come back and finish later. I don't know. I don't feel like.
So
I'm done.
you've bookmarked it
I've
for
bookmarked
later.
bookmarked it through in the backlog of everything that I have.
Why?
I was reading the second book in the Icewind Dale trilogy for the Drizzt books.
Mhm.
Not that it was bad, because it's good, but
Mhm.
I think I said this last podcast, I'm in the mood for good, deep story and I want to feel something, which sounds like I'm depressed, but we went over this last episode. I promise I'm not.
I think
To
we all
recap the
feel
last
something.
episode, he's not depressed.
I'm not depressed. That being said, so I decided to go and cap it for a little bit, bookmark it, set it aside, I'll read it later.
That's
And I
depressing.
picked up book 3 of Malazan, the Malazan series.
So that's the appropriate level of depression.
No, to be fair, kind of, but the appropriate level of depression, I've been reading Way of Kings again, but I don't want to start my reread yet.
What have you just been like flipping to parts in the Way of Kings, or?
No. What do you mean?
You said you've been reading Way of Kings again.
I don't want to start my reread
Oh,
yet.
okay,
I said if I wanted the appropriate amount of, I would go. But this book is actually, it's once again, Malazan is just such a hard book series to read. Not that it's like confusing, it's just the way he writes and the way he tells the world. Like, it's not like exposition. Like, a lot
It
of what
engages your thinking muscle.
and like a lot of what is told to you is told through conversations with the characters.
Subtext.
Basically. So it's just confusing, but it's really good. The characters this one goes back to follow the characters from the first book.
Okay.
Second book kind of did like an offshoot in a different part of the world.
Okay.
So it's interesting. I'm enjoying it. I'm hitting some parts that are really interesting. It's a really long book though.
Yeah.
It's like another 900 pages.
Okay.
So it'll take me, I'm like page 200, I think.
Nice.
But yeah, other than that, I have been just making my way through Attack on Titan.
Mm-hmm.
Phenomenal.
I need to follow up with that.
Phenomenal.
How far into it are you now?
Coming near the end of season 2. Season 2
I
is a
haven't
little bit.
seen any of Attack on Titan, so
I watched
unaware.
season 1 years ago now, actually.
Okay.
And actually, that might have been when there wasn't season 2 yet. And I enjoyed it, but I just never followed up.
It is phenomenal. Season 2 is a lot shorter than season 1. It's only like, I think it's only like 10 episodes. And then I think season 3 jumps back up Season 2 seems like it's its own little arc. But it is, once again, super phenomenal. Animation in that show is just outstanding.
Yeah.
Not only the animation, but the art style. I like the thick lines, a lot of the characters, just the way I don't know, just everything about it is just really pleasant to watch.
I remember it being nice to look at.
That was initially one of the things that initially turned me off to it, was not necessarily the animation or the style, the art style, but the combat. I was like, the fighting giants, it just seems different. Odd. But the more I've watched it, I'm like, this is awesome. This is anime as heck, and I love it.
I think the weapons, like the little gadgets they use,
the gear,
and like the suit,
like the omni
it's
gear,
not really
or
a
whatever.
suit, but the omnidirectional whatever is like, you look at that and you're like, wow, that kind of makes sense, at least in anime terms. But it's also unique, and I think it fits the story really well.
It fits the story and the world really well. But we were learning, through the season we're learning a lot more. They just drop a lot of heavy stuff on you. And like, we're in the middle of some really heavy stuff. Mm-hmm. I have a feeling Aaron's about to go off again.
Uh-oh. Not my wife. She's fine.
E-R-E-N, not E-R-I-N.
Huh. Okay.
It's Japanese. Mm. But yeah, so I'm really...
I have to watch it.
Really liking that show right now. Other than that, though, not.
Drawing.
I'm drawing. Continuously trying to draw some more. Got a new drawing tablet.
When are you going to put that animation that you finished on
I guess I could probably...
The interwebs.
I could probably throw that on soon, actually, I think about it.
The world needs to know.
Since I'm going to redo it.
The world needs to see it.
That was fun. I'm going to redo it. There'll be this animation, for those who will see it or care to see it. This is going to be an animation that I'm going to redo the first part, and it's going to be a longer story. I won't tell why or for what it's for. But shout out.
To be announced.
Very secret.
But shout out. I won't say to who, but shout out.
If you follow the show, you might have a theory.
You might have a theory as to who. But he also does not know about it.
Your Jeremiah Carrick theory sucks.
Yes. But yeah. Other than that, some games.
Nice.
Just the usual stuff. I'm in a Dark Souls mood.
Mm-hmm.
So, started Dark Souls 3 again.
Oh, okay.
Already just love life.
I heard that game makes you hate your life.
That was, yeah.
I think if you play Dark Souls, you love death.
That's what I was alluding to.
You're going to suffer, but you're going to be happy about
exactly.
The lore is so good, though. Like, in the world, yes. You even get the Italian hand. But it's just, so difficult. I don't know. It's a fun game. I like it. Playing that.
Nice.
What have you been up to, Josh?
Hold
on, let me guess.
It's like a test that you knew you had to prepare for, and you're like, why didn't I prepare for this?
Let me guess.
What?
Writing.
Right, yes. That is definitely... I don't have a lot of spare brain cells that aren't involved in writing right now.
All four.
Hey. There's more than that. At least a few. Yeah, I've been writing a lot. I'm writing I'm up to where my episodes are. So I'm like hot off the presses. It's coming out.
I hope it's good.
It's going into the app. It's like the editor looks at it and says, "Thanks for giving me that," and then goes into the thing. Pretty much.
He's got the fresh product.
So, which I mean, I do my own passes, but I mean, it's also what I'm writing right now is really intuitive, because it's very climactic stuff that I've had kind of in. It's kind of like as I've been writing, this ending has been coming into focus more and more, and so it's like now that I'm there, it's kind of like it becomes more of like it just kind of comes to you, and then you kind of just shape it a little bit away from, okay, wait, no, that's not quite it, no, there it is, instead of just sitting there like, what is going to happen next? Like, how do I, keep this going? So it's not really hard writing,
I think that's really cool, actually, that as the story's coming out of you, the end is becoming clear. I think there's something to be said about that. You're Wow, that's awesome. Actually, like as you're it's flowing.
It is flowing,
and the goal becomes clearer.
Yeah, and because of, really, like, think about stories. By the end of the story, you want the end to kind of be clear, like the viewer should kind of be, there should be some like surprise, right? Mm-hmm. You have some twists and stuff, but at the same time, even when the twist happens, it's kind of like, oh, how did I not see that? It was so obvious. It was like building towards this, so it makes sense when you're writing. And some people, the way they write, they are able to kind of outline that all ahead of time, and I'm just not.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you outline it all? Like, did you have the ending outlined to begin with, or is it more of just as you've written, you've kind of understood what the ending was going to end up being?
I just knew basically what the story was about. I just knew the story is about this, is about hunting misfortune. So it's literally about like, how is this guy, he's hunting this other guy down that needs someone to pull him out of a literal darkness. And so that's really like the vibe of the whole story. And but so I got to a certain point where I did something with a character, and when I did that to the character, I was like, okay, this is how the season is going to end. Is going to be how this gets resolved. Like, it's going to be, there was the beginning of something that was going to be resolved at the end of the season. So, so writing that, has definitely been really rewarding. I just have, all sorts of things to balance time wise. So it's not been, I haven't been able to just sit down and just write 5,000 words, in one sitting or whatever. But I'm almost done. I'm a few episodes away. So just gotta, I'll get to the end of what I know, and then I know I need to do like kind of an epilogue or kind of a little, there's some characters I feel like I need to give a little bit more information about what's going on with them, so people don't feel like I just completely dropped them.
They're tying up loose ends.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then I'm planning on taking a break from that and maybe work on my book, but just kind of like letting my writing pace be less driven by the deadlines. Mm-hmm. So, which deadlines are good. Deadlines help you get stuff done, but it also leaves less room for, going back and being and kind of taking something that you wrote this one direction that felt right just in the moment, and then having something hit you and think, whoa, what if I could go back and just tweak this a little bit, and then that would completely change this. And I don't really have the freedom to do that with the way this episodic stuff keeps releasing. Like, I was like thinking the other day, it's like, oh, I wish I could, if I was going to do this, I'd have to go back and edit this. Yeah. Which technically I could do, but it would be not fair to the people who have been reading with me this whole time.
Yeah.
People that picked it up later, maybe wouldn't notice, obviously, but anyway, so that's my rant.
While writing Hunting Misfortune, have you had any thoughts while writing it to be like, I could go back and change this in my book? Or have you not really thought too much about the book?
I have been thinking about it because my book is the same world as this story in this app that I've been writing.
Different characters?
There are a couple characters that are in this that are also in the book.
Okay.
This takes place before the book. So because of that, I have, it's made me think about certain scenes in certain ways that characters behave, about things they would have encountered. That would need to be, I definitely would need to do some continuity, like edits on the book. Mm. If I want them to be consistent continuity wise, which I do, even though I don't know, what the future long term is for the story on the app. But, so yeah, definitely there's some things, and there's just some things I was thinking about with the way I treated certain things in this. I'm treating certain things in the story and the way I treated it in the book when I was writing the book, trying to think of like, is this too different? Is there an explanation here? And I kind of think I have an idea of, there's this specific thing in the void. Like the void is a little bit different. There's a realm they go into called the void realm, and there's a phenomenon in there that's different in the short story, than it is in the book. It's portrayed differently, and so I'm thinking about how continuity wise what the reason is for that, or do I need to edit the book and make it? And I don't think I do. I think I have a continuity reason that makes sense. So, but yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Anything else?
We're watching more Mandalorian season 1 with my wife. Her first time through it. And she's already watched season 2, which listeners heard me say that. But yeah, so we just got to something at the end of season 1 not the end of season 1, the end of an episode with Fennec Shand, the assassin that they're trying to get to, and she gets shot, and then someone there's like an end scene or like a post. It's kind of not really post credits, but it's almost to the credits scene where someone walks up to her body, and she's seen season 2, so she knows
who it is.
And she's like, "Oh, I wish I didn't know that." And I was like, "Well, sorry."
Maybe you should have watched season 2.
That's an interesting watching strategy.
She got into season 2. That's just what happened. I was watching season 2.
It happens when you're married.
She didn't see herself watching the show. Then she got into season 2, and then season 3 is about to come out. So I was like, we should watch season 1. And but she's been enjoying it a lot.
That happened with Steph and I. Except Steph was watching a rewatch of Downton Abbey.
Oh,
and it started. She was at season 3 or 4. I can't remember. I think it was season 3. And we were actually at a hotel on a vacation, and she was watching on her phone, and I was playing a game, and I
started paying attention.
And then I ended up actually really liking it, and then watching the whole rest of the show. Not gone back and watched the other seasons.
Yeah.
I was just at this point, I don't.
It's like my wife in Grey's Anatomy. I've seen so much Grey's Anatomy against my will, but but at the same time, it's it is entertaining. I mean, there's a reason it's been on TV for over 10
700 years.
Yeah. But I know just things about Grey's Anatomy I can never rightfully explain to someone.
Are
you a Grey's Anatomy fan?
The whatchamacallit shows, with couples, and they I don't know, what are they called?
Say Us to the Dress and
stuff like that. Steph throws it on all the time.
Right.
But the ones where the drama gets really heavy. I'm
yes.
I'll find myself oh, interesting. Then I go, what's their problem, honey? And she goes, you want to just go back? No, I don't want to go back.
Just tell me what the conflict is.
I can.
Yeah. Why is he mad?
I live for the drama. No, that's funny.
But yeah, so Mandalorian is good.
Props to people who can get into a story that way. That would drive me nuts. I couldn't do it.
Downton Abbey was a little bit different because it's not I feel like there really is. I mean, there's a story, but there's not it's not like a fantasy show or anything that's there is an overarching story, but it's really easy to pick up on. I don't know.
British,
it's just British life,
British problems,
British high class culture,
back in what the 1800s or early 1900s.
It's turn of century. It was because I think the first season starts in it's a show I've also seen because of my wife.
The World War One, takes place during World War One.
Yeah, it starts during World War One.
That's when I started.
It gets Anyway, what's that?
That has nothing to do with
this
fantasy.
Downton Abbey deep dive lore episode that we didn't know we were recording.
You know what?
I didn't prepare for this one.
You know what? Give it a watch. It's actually not that bad. My dad has watched it 4 times now.
Anywho, that's pretty much it for me. Video game wise, I haven't been playing. I haven't played much more Hogwarts Legacy recently because I've been writing, and then I upgraded my computer, and it won't run now.
So you downgraded your computer.
I mean, so I upgraded all the components, and it was fine. And then I changed hard drives, and I installed Windows 11. And
that's your problem.
Yeah, there's something missing. Some drivers or something missing, but I haven't had time to troubleshoot it. So no more Hogwarts Legacy for now.
Did you try turning it off and back on?
Yes.
Oh well.
He is an IT guy, aren't you?
That's the extent of my help.
I am, aren't I? It's in my signature at work.
They buried Skynet in Windows 11.
Skynet is coming alive before our very eyes.
Dude, AI is... Whew.
The singularity.
That's a whole episode in itself. We'll have to go over.
I was messing around with Speechify today. And that's an app that turns anything into an audio, like an audiobook, basically. If you have the text, it will. There's like a premium subscription, but you can have Snoop Dogg's voice read you anything, and it sounds like Snoop Dogg's reading it to you. It's so weird. Anyway,
they use similar technology in the in some of the Star Wars episodes. Actually, that's how they got Vader's voice and Luke's voice.
Well, yeah, didn't James Earl Jones like signs away the? Basically say, you guys can AI my voice if you want. Like,
he's like, I'm tired of it.
He's like, yeah,
stop making me
call
come back.
He's like Harrison Ford too. Just like, just kill me. I just want to die.
Well, you are, but you're not also.
Anyway, Alex, what have you been up to?
Yeah. Sort of in the middle of in the beginning stages of a complete life overhaul, actually. Just had an epiphany lately about the way I'm living my life and how that doesn't match up with my goals at all. And just been trying to, change, get rid of some bad habits that I've been perpetuating and chasing the wrong things and the wrong people. Just realizing how it's still, not too late. I still have time to change those things and get to where I want to be. And that's actually been really refreshing. The first step was leaving my old job, which I think was having a negative impact on, my thinking and my habits. And it's a process. I've already implemented some of the smaller changes, and honestly, it's very freeing. And at this point, I'm probably in the best headspace I've been since maybe high school.
Good.
So I've been feeling great lately. As far as like entertainment, sci-fi wise, it's not technically sci-fi, but the most recent thing I watched was The Last of Us show. I didn't play either of the games. I had heard about them, knew a little bit. And it was actually a friend of mine who was like, hey, I want to watch this. Come over and watch it with me. And I was hooked right away.
Yeah.
So whether you played the games or not, I highly recommend it. It does get pretty violent. So if, if gruesomeness isn't your thing, proceed with caution.
If you like it, definitely watch.
Yes. Refreshingly good. I know a lot of people were expecting it to be mediocre, probably because
that's been a common.
You never know.
It's been a common thing
like
this day and age. So.
Yeah, a lot of bad TV
for live action specifically, and especially with adaptations.
Yeah.
Not been great,
right? Yeah, adaptations certainly, but
anime will always be there for you though.
The story was so satisfying. So anyone who doesn't mind a little violence and wants a good character story, The Last of Us for sure. I've been trying to get back into anime. It's been a while. So I returned to the first one I ever saw. I'm pretty sure it was my first exposure to real anime. Gundam Wing.
Oh yeah,
on like Toonami in the early 2000s.
I remember that.
It's not quite as good as I remember. It's just not.
They never are.
Me. No,
they never are.
No. Yeah.
But I read about. I mean, there's 700 Gundam shows from different timelines, and that's its own.
It's like Transformers at this point.
Yeah, that's its own rabbit hole. But I started doing some reading about like where should you start and which ones are good, and turns out Wing is like kind of in the middle of the pack in terms of quality. So I'm like, well, it was okay. So I guess I need to change gears and find something better. But I just remember watching like Death Note, Samurai Champloo, and all that stuff, and some of the best storytelling is in anime.
100% agreed.
Yeah, and I think people sell it really short just because, like, oh, it's
animated, it's cartoons.
Cartoons from Japan.
Apparently, anime is like outselling like Western comics right now. Like, apparently, like
I believe it.
Like, anime is really really big right now. Partly because the storytelling in the West has been getting sidetracked with other priorities and things.
Yeah, we're letting our storytelling get driven by politics. And that's what I've noticed. That's why I think a lot of anime and manga is good, where there are, to an extent, politics embedded in the story.
It's in the story.
It's in the story. It's not. It's not.
They're not bringing real life.
It's just the Attack on Titan has like a bunch of overarching stories of like or other things going on underneath that. Like, if you pay attention, you're like, oh wow, that's like, it's a lot about war.
Yeah,
stuff like that, and like that's great. But it's not like sacrificing the story to get a point across. It's getting a point across through the story.
Yeah, it enhances the story, and I think like I want that. I want politics and conflict in my story. I think that's what builds a good story, but I don't want it to be some meta commentary on what's going on in the real world. I watch shows and movies and whatnot to an extent forget about all that.
Absolutely.
I want to be entertained, right?
Absolutely.
So I don't want to hear about what's going on in the real world.
Absolutely.
And I think Western media is certainly stumbling big time over that right now.
There's a few things out there. Once again, most of it's just animation that seems to be kind of taking a step back, and like the Critical Vox Machina show, Critical Role animation show is actually really good. Mm-hmm. And they, as far as I can tell from what I've seen, they're not pushing any narrative that you see in a lot of Western stuff right now. It's just their story from their podcast. And it's good. The animation's really good. You get just, I don't know. Animation right now really seems to be on the up and up. Both Western and Japanese animation is making a comeback, and it's
happy to see that.
Storytelling ability in animation is so much better than live action too.
You can do a lot more for less, which certainly has a lot of advantages. So I think I'll have to switch gears and dive into the list, and Attack on Titan's near the top. I mean, there's so many. I know.
I'm building my list right now.
There's fixing to be a Lord of the Rings anime. Next year, I think the Rohirrim, War of the Rohirrim, like a movie's coming out. So, and then I think, like Star Wars. Did you ever watch Visions?
No, but I saw some clips, heard some things, and it looks interesting.
It's very easy. It's fun and very easy.
They're short. Different studios, you get canonical. Like different stories, different animation styles, so it's kind of fun.
In fact, a couple years ago, I saw something on YouTube a fan had made. It was like, it was anime style, and it was like an Imperial pilot, and it was this sequence of them like running to the hangar, getting in their they're going to a space battle or whatever, big space battle between the Empire and Rebels, and watching that, I was like, oh man, I would be all in on a full Star Wars anime. Oh, yeah. I don't want to hear about like Luke, Vader, Han Solo. Something they different. Can all be cameos. Yeah. Cameos at best. Yep. But give me a story about like a group of soldiers or something.
Yeah. Take the X-Wing novels, the Rogue Squadron novels, make an anime out of that.
I'd be... Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because none of the main... I think Luke Skywalker makes a cameo and Leia makes a cameo. Otherwise... It's just all new characters. They're X-Wing pilots. I mean, spaceship battles is great anime, animation and all that.
And, even just watching something like Gundam Wing, I could see that transfer to and have the politics be, background. That would be sick. I don't know if Disney would ever go for that, like a full anime.
Having a big enough IP like Lord of the Rings, though, do it. Like, I think
could be the first domino to fall.
That could be like a sign of where things may, at least a temporary trend. You might see a few anime movies from big IPs come out.
Not only that, you're also, right now, Star Wars is consistently, the only thing that everyone is consistently actually enjoying from all Disney Star Wars is their animated stuff. Clone Wars, Bad Batch, the Tales of the Jedi, all that, like, consistently, like, obviously there's a few different gripes people have, but consistently
those are the ones that aren't divisive.
Yeah, most people are like, these are actually really good stories. They're telling good stories. Most of the complaints are, this is a filler episode, which happens in all animation.
Yeah,
but otherwise, hopefully someone is paying attention. Maybe hey, this is
I think that would be a refreshing like change of pace. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Agreed.
What else? Oh, that kind of, the whole animation thing kind of sparked my memory. Love, Death, and Robots. Mm-hmm. You ever heard of this show?
I've heard of it.
My brother likes that show a lot.
It's great.
Shout out to Jua.
And they're like anthology episodes. Each one is its own contained thing. And there's some really, effective and efficient storytelling because they range from 5 to like 20 minutes, I think, is the longest. And
so it's very tight.
Yeah, very tight. And each one, stands alone and just really good, effective storytelling. Yeah. And I think actually season 3 recently came out.
I think so.
Where do you watch it?
Netflix.
It's on Netflix?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's one I would highly recommend.
Some really good animation in it too.
Yeah.
From the few episodes that my brother showed me.
And really the show has like 2 main creators, but they, I guess they contract studios from all over the world to create each episode. I think the way I understand is they come up with the stories and they give each studio, a little bit of creative license to do what they want, but it's kind of like, here's what we want to see. Do it in your animation style. And so each, episode to episode, the stories are different, but also the visual style is different.
That's fun.
Yeah.
I think that's fun.
Yeah.
Especially when they're not that long either, because then if it's like you're not really into that visual style, it's like...
You didn't lose much.
And it's not like it's going to continue on or whatever.
Yeah.
If you haven't watched it yet, speaking of animation, if you haven't watched it yet, you need to. Arcane.
I heard
knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. That is... right now, that is one of the highest top animes, I think it's Western animation, but it's like up there, like storytelling wise. It's an adult animation. It's one of the first like Western animations that are like fully adult, adult tones. Each episode is 45 minutes long too. It's like the whole thing is like 8-9 episodes. I think it's 9.
Yeah, it's because it's kind of split into 3 arcs.
Yeah,
it's got an overall arc, but it's like there's definitely 3 episode 3 kind of
stories within the story.
But that is phenomenal storytelling and phenomenal, probably my favorite animation I think so far right now is that.
One of my favorite YouTubers, he and his colleagues, their focus is, media analysis and review, and his claim is Arcane is adapted from something?
League of Legends.
Game. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know the overarching story of League of Legends. I know very little.
I think that they're from their base, their main most popular game, League of Legends game, the MOBA. There isn't really an overarching story.
So I imagine they're just like borrowing the world and some characters.
Lore. This is their way of making a story.
Yeah,
and lore and world and just building everything. Because they've branched out. They've made like a game. They're making 3 more games right now.
There's a book, right?
They have a book out. They have this show. I mean, they're like
that was kind of the book came out of the show, right?
Mm-hmm. No.
Well, what came after the show? I mean,
book came from after the show, but from the video game that came out.
Okay.
Well, he claims that Arcane is probably the best adaptation currently available, and that he said the story's very good, and I often find myself agreeing with his opinions, and so he highly recommended that, and then he said Last of Us is probably the second best adaptation. So I'll probably get around to Arcane at some point.
Yeah,
I recommend that one.
Yeah,
it's a good one.
The other thing is I'm always playing something. I'm normally a one game sort of guy. Focus on one game for a while. And lately that's been Overwatch 2.
Okay.
Which I know has its own like lore and story, whatever. I'm at this point in my life, I'm more of like a multiplayer type of guy. I just want to get online and, play some matches and whatnot. I used to be like a story game guy. Gears of War was my franchise that I cared about.
I think I played the first 3 of those.
Yeah. I played all the way up to 3, and then after that I just kind of fell off. But lately it's been Overwatch 2, which I enjoy a lot. I like the team-based aspect of it. I've always searched for that more out of a game as opposed to like Call of Duty or solo rampage. But and then I revisit Battlefield 1 from time to time. Still to this day.
It's a very, very good game.
Staple and I play that a lot.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
both good games. I played Overwatch for a little bit, Overwatch 2, when it first came out. Yeah. And then I've fallen off the multiplayer.
Yeah.
I'm either story-wise, or right now I'm really into roguelites, like Hades. I don't know if you've heard of Hades. Or like Dead Cells, you heard of that? Procedurally generated levels where you go in and basically you just do a run. It's kind of like you're trying to get to the end, but like you're gonna die and start from the beginning. But each time you go through, you kind of can level your character up, get better, stronger, and you learn the game more. Okay. I've been playing this a lot more just because I like to listen to things or watch things while I play a game, and that's easy to just throw that. Or when I'm at work, I don't like playing a story game on my Switch when I'm at work because I can get a call at any moment. So I'm playing those instead.
Yeah. I do want to check out the Dead Space remaster.
Yeah, it's like a full remake.
It's a remake. Yeah,
remake. Okay.
I think they changed a few things too. I heard it's phenomenal. I heard it's really good.
I know nothing about Dead Space, but I see some of the art, and it just looks like the type of thing that
very scary.
Would be right up my alley.
Yeah, it's good. I played the original. It's really good.
I played the original. I did not finish the original. And it wasn't because it wasn't a good game. It was because I couldn't handle it.
Yeah, it's actually very.
It was
scary.
just scary. Like and I would always end up playing it at night.
Mm-hmm. Always.
It's the worst time to play it. I remember my little sister watching me play it, and she kept wanting me to go back and play it. She's like, "When are you going to play Dead Space again? When are you going to beat Dead Space?" I'm like, "I am never going to beat Dead Space because it's terrifying."
She wants to turn your experience into a movie.
I guess so. But there is so much about. I mean, the ambience of the game, the look of the game. I mean, it's a great looking game, very compelling, interesting story, very like immersive. Ambient sounds. You always feel like something's about to come out around the corner. Always. And that's part of it too. I'm just amped up the whole time.
Keeps you on edge the entire time. At least the original. I'm going to have to remake it. I'm assuming it's pretty much the same.
Yeah. So I don't know if I would go back to now. The later games I heard are a little more action focused. They're not as like. I don't know. What would you say? Have you played any other ones?
They
still have it.
It's one of those things where they kind of. They change things up for the sequels.
It's more fast-paced.
Which I think is a great thing for sequels to do, by the way.
Which are, if it's done right. And the thing is with this game is they did, I think, specifically with 3, I don't remember much about 2, but specifically 3, they went too much into the action-oriented gunplay.
They went too far.
And kind of lost their horror element, which is what made that game so great. The ambiance, the horror. You know, the first game, you're on the ship the entire time in space until it's dark and you have like a plasma cutter as a gun. It's terrifying. Whereas in the third game, you're like getting machine guns and like blasting things on an icy planet and you're just like, there's still horror elements, but...
kind of lost the spirit of where it came from.
Yeah.
But yeah, from a guy who's like, I would say sci-fi is probably my favorite genre. Just looking at him like, I need to know. I need to find out.
What makes space dead?
Yeah. Why is space not alive, though?
Well, what do y'all say we take a little break, grab some drinks?
Cool.
Come back and talk about some sequels.
Sounds good.
The sequel to this episode.
Whoa. Well, no.
Whatever. Second part. That's kind of... Anyway, bye. Well, we're back. We've got our drinks poured.
Okay, this monkey has an
Sorry,
eye
no sound of cans opening this week.
Its stomach.
What has it got in its
stomach? It's got an eye in its stomach.
Let me see that picture. Ooh.
I thought your third eye was supposed to be in your forehead.
That's what the belly button is, apparently.
I guess it works different for monkeys.
He's also got... he's got 4 arms, so...
What's the name of the drink?
Victory.
Yes.
The berry monkey flavor. A fruited sour triple. This is a sour berry twist, perfectly fruity sour triple ale loaded with raspberries that add just the right balance of sweetness and tang with a smooth finish. It's undeniably very good.
Okay, now read it like a monkey.
The background art reminds me of that Lion King sequence where they're singing the song.
Yeah. Like that?
No.
The right way?
The one where Simba's singing. Where he's kind of like teenage Simba.
Gonna be king.
Yeah, that one. It's like nighttime out.
That's the one where it's like the Hakuna Matata. It means no worries.
I don't think so. No, this is before he gets lost, right?
I don't know.
I think.
With all
I remember Rafiki speaking to him at that point.
Well, that was at the end. That was like after the song. Is he's like all grown up?
Let's just break down the Lion King movie, guys. Talking about sequels. Lion King 1.5.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that went way.
No, it went nowhere.
All right, let's try this drink. It's about how I imagine that would taste, actually.
Mm-hmm. It's
very good.
Ouch. It's a little subdued, which I like.
It is. It doesn't. It I don't know, I like. It doesn't taste as much like a beer.
Mm-hmm.
Which stands to reason because I don't think it necessarily.
It's somewhere
is,
in between a beer and a
cider.
Cider, yeah. My only problem with ciders is they tend to be too sweet.
Yeah,
and I think a sour, if you like the cider vibe, but don't want too much sugar, a sour is a good alternative for you.
Yeah, these might be. I might have to get some more of these and try different ones.
I do like
sours are heavily underrated.
I like the flavor, but I like the immediate hit of, I'm guessing this, whatever the sour part of the drink is, like the immediate hit of that right as soon as I swallow, I'm done swallowing. Is a little off-putting, but then
it's a little dry.
Yeah, it's the dryness. Yeah. I don't know
it's probably the berry in this.
It's the dryness of that immediate dryness hits you.
Yeah.
But then the taste, like the taste like on my mouth, just like right now, is good.
Mm-hmm.
I like. So
this is a good choice. I really like this.
Definitely far better than the hard kombucha.
Not a fan of hard kombucha.
Not the flavor that Josh got.
What brand was it?
I don't remember.
It had a cool logo.
It was like,
and it had a cool name.
Honey. It was disgusting.
You were probably drinking something from a company called Juneshine?
I don't know.
I honestly don't remember.
It looked like it had like a phoenix on the can or something.
Okay. Well,
let's go back and find the episode.
My cousin from California is actually has a manager position in Juneshine, which is they make hard kombucha. A lot of their stuff's really good, but they do have one that's like a spicy sriracha that I don't care for.
I feel like it would have been good if it weren't for that. It could not get past whatever the hell we were drinking. It was just like.
Well, I think that in I haven't had that many experiences with kombucha, but I've never had a good one. So
yeah, I'm also not a fan.
I just think that part of it is the kombucha flavor is part of what we didn't like.
But Stephanie likes kombucha, and she also did not like this drink.
Yeah. If you like kombucha or are curious about what a hard kombucha tastes like, try something from Juneshine. They make a lot of good stuff. Some of the flavors are like really out there, like. They have one called a spicy margarita, which
sounds too bad.
You really have to. It sounds good conceptually, but you really have to have a taste.
I don't like spicy margaritas to begin with, so those are actually a thing. And,
okay.
And I just want
to. They make all sorts of flavors, from like fruity stuff to just really out there stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah. Juneshine. But this is really good.
Yeah, I'm enjoying this.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Tastes like victory.
Mm-hmm.
Victory. So sequels. We love some. We hate some. We want more of some.
Yes, we do.
That's the episode, guys. All right.
Well, I want to throw it to Alex because it was his idea, and so I want to see what how do you want us to talk about sequels, Alex?
I think let me start with a question here, and then we can move on to what I think is most important, which is what makes for a good sequel. Like, what are the essential elements to create a good sequel? But my question is, so I did some research for this, and I Googled top sequels of all time, just because I wanted to see,
right.
What I thought matches up with consensus, or just what's out there, and about 60 to 70% of the lists that I found, the top 5 are the same. Not necessarily in the same order, but there's a consensus top 5 sequels of all time. So I want to see if you guys what your thoughts are, what you think they are.
Well, the one off the top of my head is The Dark Knight.
That was one.
That is...
Yeah, I had that down too.
Definitely one of my favorite sequels to a movie. I mean, I like Batman Begins, but The Dark Knight is just such a phenomenal movie. Alone, it's a phenomenal movie, let alone it being a sequel. So that's definitely on there.
I wrote down, I've never seen it, but I wrote down Godfather 2.
Okay.
Because I was just guessing that would be... I've always heard the great things about the Godfather movies.
I didn't know there was a Godfather 2.
There's a trilogy, I think.
There's 3.
I think you're right.
Am I right that it was on there, or do you remember?
I want to see what the rest of your list is, and I'll tell you if you're right or not.
Oh, so I wrote a lot of things down for best sequels, but I'm just like throwing them out there. But so Godfather 2 is one.
Okay.
Terminator 2 was one.
Terminator 2 is on my list.
Dark Knight was on there. I wrote down The Two Towers. I don't know if that people even count that. Is the Lord
of the Rings trilogy is an interesting one because
it's kind of one story.
I wouldn't necessarily consider The Two Towers and Return of the King sequels in the traditional sense because not because it's a trilogy, but because they were all filmed at the same time.
More like parts. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3.
Right.
Kind of how I see it. I've always seen those movies of like...
they knew they were going to have to make multiple movies. They used same cast. They filmed them concurrently. So
it's not like you're trying to come back and then say, where would the story go from here?
Right.
You know, it's not that same kind of sequel element.
Right.
I get.
Whereas
would you say Star Wars is a similar thing? Because I wrote down Empire Strikes Back.
I would actually
Star Wars
say,
is different.
So I'm glad you brought that up because that's where I make the distinction because, so George Lucas was involved in all three.
Right.
However, it wasn't initially conceived as a trilogy. They did A New Hope kind of wraps up as its own story, but they come back and made 2 more movies that make sense along with it. So it's not like they had to retcon anything.
Right.
So I would consider the the original trilogy, the other movies. I know we'll get there, I'm sure. I would consider the other movies in the original trilogy true sequels.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas I would consider the Lord of the Rings one whole thing.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I Empire's on there for me too.
Okay.
I definitely think Empire's up there.
Okay, so we got Godfather 2, T2, what is it? Dark Knight, Empire. What's your 5th?
So, I mean, I put Spider-Man 2 on there.
The Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Tobey Maguire.
I mean, I think that is probably, if you're going like 1 to 2, right? If you're going like the original to the second movie sequel, I think that might be the best superhero movie sequel.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess Dark Knight, like critically, obviously Dark Knight's better. But Spider-Man 2, I guess I just give it more credit because of what it was doing when no one else was doing it. You know, it was like way ahead of the curve on the superhero movie genre.
I'm not super familiar. Is that the one with Doc Ock?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Very iconic,
That scene with the arms.
The arms.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. On the subway fight and everything, and yeah.
That's an interesting answer. Germ, what do you got? Top 5?
So Dark Knight for sure.
Okay.
T2. Empire was on there.
Oh man, I wish I could change my answer if I could.
Oddly enough,
I'll circle back.
Into Darkness. Star Trek Into Darkness.
Interesting.
I don't know if that would be on the list, but it's definitely. I don't know. I've always heard it considered a really good sequel. 5.
That was the sour. That wasn't me shaking my head at your answer. It was extra sour.
Your choice sucks.
Oh man.
Did you say Empire already?
He said Empire, yeah.
So we got 3 right now?
Attack of the Clones.
He's got 4 so far.
Oh man.
I got 4. Okay, just need one more.
Yeah, he just needs one more.
It's been such a long time.
You don't have to have one more, I guess.
I'm not gonna.
You could deny that there's a top 5. And
I'm not gonna torture it out of you.
It's been a long time. I remember Alien 2 being really good.
Okay.
So I'll go with that.
Go with that?
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen that.
Both of you have 4 out of 5.
Oh, wow.
So the consensus top 5 is Godfather 2, T2, Dark Knight, Empire, and Aliens.
I am shocked.
Wow.
So
that we got that close.
The Spider-Man 2 was actually in like the top 15 of a lot of those lists. And then Into Darkness was nowhere to be seen.
I just really like that movie.
What were you going to change your answer to?
So one that I wrote down, and I have a couple others that I think are really strong too, but Blade Runner 2049.
Okay.
Blade Runner is a film that was kind of a cult. It's kind of a cult hit. I have seen it, but it's not like it didn't just blow me away as a like contemporary, watching it as in the contemporary times. But the sequel is just such and we can get into the important elements of sequel, but just the way they execute the sequel, Blade Runner 2049, it feels so connected to the original, and yet
it looks completely different.
Well, I mean, it's still very original story and it takes things from the original concepts and like extrapolates in a way that makes sense that they would be extrapolated, and just executes it all really well with the modern technology and special effects that they can do. Tells a really compelling story, brings a character back in a really satisfying way. So I feel like that should be up there pretty high. I don't know if you saw that on there, but
that was a pretty common one on the list. Yeah.
So
before I Googled it, I tried to think like, what would I say? And mine were Dark Knight, Empire, T2, Aliens, and then I just had no clue what the fifth one would be. And then, Godfather 2, I'm like, oh yeah, there was a second one. I've never seen either.
I haven't either, so that wasn't even on my mind.
Yeah. But I'm surprised both of you got 4 out of 5. That's really good.
Look at us go.
Which I think goes to show like how quality those sequels are, and also the fact that there's not a lot of like truly good sequels.
Relatively there are good sequels out there for sure, but there's so many sequels that weigh everything else.
The general trend is they normally take a significant step down from the original.
Straight to video.
Yeah. So straight to video, actually.
All the Disney, most of the Disney sequels, from the 90s, are all you watch the one, you watch the other, and just oh man, it's nothing.
Well, I think there's 4 Aladdin movies or something like that.
I actually like the second Aladdin movie, but the quality wise, it definitely stuff.
I mean, we were talking about Lion King. Lion King 1.5 is technically a sequel, sort of, not really, I guess, because it actually takes place during the story.
Yeah.
Still phenomenal.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't even know what you would call that because it is overlapping. But
I would say, as far as animated movies go, Toy Story and Lion King have some pretty strong.
That's true.
Pretty strong stuff.
Toy Story, that's
most of the Pixar movies.
Yeah.
Because they don't. The Pixar movies, I just feel like they never skimped on the sequels.
Yeah.
But yeah, Toy Story. What are some of the other? Oh, Finding Nemo, Finding Dory.
I never saw Finding Dory.
Actually, Puss in Boots. The
recent one was good.
I've heard almost unanimous praise for it.
This is the latest one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which what a left field thing to pop out. Amazing.
Literally keep seeing things on my Instagram and YouTube of why Puss in Boots the last one is just such a good movie and the greatest, how to make a good villain. I'm like, what?
I've been seeing the same thing. I'm like, what did they do to this cat, bro? What's going on?
What? Really? How? What happened?
Yeah.
This was a cat in Shrek.
I've heard.
I never saw the original Puss in Boots, so
yeah.
I don't know, comparison wise, how good that.
They're not bad. It's actually the original one's actually not a bad movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it so much that I'm I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I'm I need to watch this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Why is it getting
this cultural phenomenon?
Yeah, exactly. So I think, okay, well then, we have some ideas of what some good sequels are. What makes them good? What makes them worthy?
Lung buzz.
Worthiness. So, I mean, I think in a sequel, starting place, right? The sequel, it needs to be justified that there's a sequel, right?
Yeah.
If you're watching a sequel, I mean, I guess if there's certain genres that it's less important. I feel like comedy. I feel like comedy it's not as important to this, because it's really about a lot of what's funny in comedy is just seeing these funny scenarios play out, and so bringing that together again and thinking up new ones, without a real strong justification for them being there is not as important as like the more dramatic, the more serious, the more character driven, character development kind of stuff. So you want to see that sequel. You want it to feel like it's justified.
Yeah,
like somehow the story justifies itself.
I think certainly in comedies, the overarching story isn't necessarily as important. But I think even in comedies, you can still do your characters justice, and there can be development.
Oh, yeah, sure. That's true.
But I would definitely agree that a comedy sequel doesn't need to be as justified story wise. Yeah,
I think something important for a sequel too is continuity of character. So the character has to still be the character, but then also having something happening to drive the you had the first movie. The character more likely so went through some sort of story arc in the first movie.
Right.
You need to be able to justify them going through another story arc to an extent, but also still having went through the story arc in the first movie.
Right. Without recontextualizing.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would say that's actually, for me, that's the most important.
Yeah.
I think if you make a sequel and you damage your characters in some way, or you undo their development or their achievements.
Star Wars.
Yes, sequel trilogy. I think that's the worst thing you can do in a sequel, because ultimately, at least for me, that's why I return to a franchise. I want to see the characters go through something else worthwhile.
Yeah.
So I think the easiest way to damage your sequel is to mess up something with your characters.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got the stories need to line up to some degree. The characters, certainly. I think we can all agree that's probably the most critical.
Very important.
Anything else that you would consider like important for justification of a sequel and what it's needed to make it good?
I mean, I don't know if it's needed, but it seems like it at least the way it's executed, usually the stakes increase in some way, because, and that's maybe that's part of the justification, right? Being justified is that, this story is necessary because these stakes have increased somehow.
You can't just, contrive it or something like that. It has to,
But I mean, but it doesn't have to be, the stakes increasing doesn't necessarily have to be like, the world is ending bigger, know. I mean, it can be like the stakes are increasing. I mean, like, well, for example, Spider-Man 2, right? The original Spider-Man movie is your classic origin story, and Spider-Man 2 is this conflict, inner conflict of how which you kind of see developing in the first movie, is that him being Spider-Man and trying to be Peter Parker, those two things are like clashing. It's caught him trying to thrive as Peter Parker. He can't thrive as both. Right. And so Spider-Man 2 kind of addresses that, and it does up the stakes, because it's like, you've got this threat building, and then he's having this internal character conflict. So I think having a twist on, having a twist on the conflict, that makes the character have to, not just, try harder or just, just scream louder to like be stronger, or whatever, to like overcome the obstacle. Giving them like a different kind of curveball is definitely interesting in a sequel.
Yeah. I actually really like that answer. So I think the stakes can be either internal or external. Like, there's a problem with the world around our characters or a problem inside the characters.
A good example of of those two being used, external conflicts, A New Hope, compared to more of an internal conflict with Empire. The main overarching conflict, you have this Empire, you have this rebellion. Death Star, the ending of the movie, Death Star's coming to destroy the rebellion.
The same thing is on the line.
Yes. But the Empire focuses a little bit more on the internal conflict of Luke Skywalker.
Right.
And his journey to becoming a Jedi, and then finding out about his, spoiler alert, Darth Vader being his dad.
Right.
What? Oh my god.
If you haven't watched it by now, people, the problem is you.
Yes, it's
embedded in society.
And then third movie, we go back to more of an external, both an external and internal conflict. Yeah. We have the end of the Empire, or the Emperor, but also Luke's internal conflict of being a Jedi or falling to the dark side.
Yeah. So there's a change up there, right? Yeah. So I think what you need to have to justify a sequel is just those three essential elements. Our characters have to, make sense from 1 to 2. Our overarching story has to line up to some degree. And there needs to be something different about the story. There needs to be something else at stake.
Yes.
Easy.
Yeah. Done.
That's all you got to do.
All right.
Guys.
Thanks, guys.
Figure it out.
Alex, thanks for being on.
Yeah. So, okay. So, Empire, I think that's a good starting off point.
Absolutely. Always.
Because... So George didn't necessarily conceive Star Wars as a trilogy. In fact, a lot of people called him a fool for making such a large sci-fi movie at the time.
Yep.
Right? And this is interesting that we're going to start here, but...
Heck, his original plan for Star Wars is almost completely different from what it is now. Mm-hmm. It was definitely just a contained single movie story.
Right.
And then he couldn't manage it, I think, with the special effects and all that.
Right.
Other different things, obviously story conflicts that editors were like, but...
Yeah. Which I think New Hope happens to be my favorite Star Wars movie, and I think that is one of the great things about it is its own contained story, but the continuation of the story makes a lot of sense. And in fact... Now, having watched the sequels and absorbed the story, it's almost necessary that the story continued, I would say. And that's, one of the things I love about A New Hope is, the OT in general is, so the first movie is like his call to action, right? He dreams of something bigger, but he doesn't necessarily know how to, or he doesn't even really have a means to make that happen. And he talks about wanting to, join the rebellion with his friends. I think there's like a throwaway line in when he's having dinner with...
I just remember him needing converters from Tashi Station.
Yeah.
That's similar. I think it was the same conversation.
I mean, don't we all? We could all use some catalytic converters in our lives.
That's what I'm saying.
But, so he goes from like this poor... small town farm boy, and his desire is something more, and it kind of gets thrust upon him in a way he didn't expect. And so on one hand, he's getting what he wants, but it's also a lot more than he bargained for. And in Empire, it's not just about like, okay, so the rebellion's trying to save the galaxy from the Empire. But now we have this new hero on our hands who has these abilities. And the focus shifts from how can we save the galaxy to how can we get this hero in a position to save the galaxy. Yeah. And obviously because of who the enemy is, his development and his journey is directly tied to that.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
And then again in Return of the Jedi, we get to see that come full circle. Like if you even just his mannerisms, if you watch a scene from A New Hope and then immediately after watch a scene from Return of the Jedi, a stranger would be like, whoa, how I need to see how he got from A to B. And he, like I said, naive, simple farm boy, to now he's confident. He has plans, and he has conviction about what he wants to do and what he thinks is right. And I think that's, even right away in his plan to rescue Han from Jabba, the way he presents himself is completely different from his mannerisms, even in Empire.
Oh, absolutely.
He which is, is definitely, and that's the way the movie starts, right? It starts off with that scene with him executing that. And he's not just the way he's talking, but he's just handling the Force, he's handling his abilities with such much more mastery, and so, which I think that's definitely very satisfying in sequels, to see a character, to know, like you said, where they start in these humble beginnings, and to see them in their mastery of those abilities, and then the challenges kind of have to rise to meet that. Where now since you're managing, since he's mastering his abilities in the Force and things like that, in his abilities in fighting and things like that, the conflict for him, the biggest conflict for him, is not the external, can I fight good enough? Even though Darth Vader is still going to be a good match for him physically, or in dueling and all that sort of things and abilities, but it's really about him realizing that his battle is about not crossing a line, as a character.
His internal,
the internal stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting thinking about it now, specifically with the OT, and probably because George Lucas initially didn't plan on it being a trilogy, just planned on it being the A New Hope. When you look at it, really, Empire and Return is a direct sequel to Empire. They fall more in line together than Empire and A New Hope does, as far as storyline, story arc, and character development. I'm not saying they're obviously, the trilogy works perfectly together and it's great, but in the sense of a direct sequel, almost like Return is more of a direct sequel to Empire than Empire would be to A New Hope, because you see the start of Luke's internal journey through the Force, learning about his father, and then the continuation of it in Return of the Jedi, whereas A New Hope is more of a contained story. Once again, because of George Lucas planning on it being initially the one movie. It's interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
So, okay. So, we discussed, the sequels within the OT. Now, how do you think that lines up with the sequel trilogy?
Sequel trilogy in my opinion, did almost everything wrong as far as the sequel goes. Not only did I feel like the story was justified.
Not justified.
It wasn't justified. Right. Because of how Star Wars is. This is coming from someone who likes all the books that take place after Episode 6, but even understanding that I like all those books and those stories, the story of Star Wars technically canonically ends after 6. The Emperor is dead. Luke, the light side, wins. So to now have 30 years later this whole new the Emperor's back, all this nonsense, it's just that doesn't canonically, it's not justified.
It's jarring.
It's very jarring.
The OT is the classic hero's journey.
Absolutely.
Just perfectly wrapped up in a little bow.
Absolutely.
We see our hero grow and change. We see him lose. We see him fail. And ultimately he rises to the occasion, achieves his mission.
Absolutely.
And then, surprise,
30 years later, it
didn't amount to much.
All that's crap. The Republic is back. The Empire is back.
To the degree that the enemy he defeated has returned.
Oh, who knows how? But
they don't know.
They don't know.
And this is also, and so story.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
He returned.
That's the laziest line I've ever heard.
So justification of story, awful.
Yes.
Character continuity, horrible. Probably the worst I've seen ever. Minus Han Solo, sort of. And that's a hard sort of. He's
reverted.
The problem with Han Solo is he's reverted back to who he was before the end of episode 6, and that is not a
even that
continuity.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's not really good continuity. It's once again, why did you took everything that happened in episode 6 and we're just like, well, I guess we'll just screw it all and make a whole new thing. We'll just make new characters at that point.
When you're telling a story, I've heard it said that you, and this is I think a little bit fast and loose kind of rule, but you get like one big, like I think you say one big buy, right? So it's like when you're asking your viewers or listeners or readers or whatever to get on board with something that may be a little bit outside what makes sense or whatever, and then once you've done that, once you've gotten that out of them, it's harder to get them on board with more. But the sequel trilogy asked so much of the audience up front, so many things, that it was just like, this is what we have to get on board with to have a sequel trilogy, is we have to get on board with all this. Like, it just made, I think, it made it a lot harder for people to get on board. You know,
I'm comfortable with buying a Corolla, but the sequel trilogy is trying to sell me like a military grade tank.
Yeah.
And
hold on.
Just gets worse as it goes too.
Tank. Hold on here.
It just gets worse as it goes too. You know, I mean, the plausibility just feels like it goes down the further the sequel trilogy goes in.
I agree. You get one big buy, and then from then on, it's gotta be consistent. It's gotta line up.
We can also even take the sequel trilogy, zoom in to the sequel in the sequel trilogy.
Listen, on its own, those stories don't function on a fundamental level. They don't function in the context of the trilogy of trilogies, and they don't function on their own either. In fact, each individual movie directly contradicts itself at some point.
And it's a horrible, horrible way to do sequels. You know,
shout out to our sequel trilogy fans.
You're wrong. No, I'm playing.
For the people that enjoy them, on some level, I'm jealous. I wish I could, but somewhere along the line, like, I just started thinking about, like, you know, analyzing movies on an actual quality level, and you know, and it just does not work.
I will say there is a part of me that can shut my brain off and enjoy, oddly enough, the last movie in the sequel trilogy. Because it's just so over the top and stupid that I'm like, it's just fanfic. Let's just watch it. And the special effects and the action, to an extent, are actually pretty decent. The moment I start thinking about story, and especially start thinking about episode 8, I'm like, all right, I just can't. Which is why I don't watch it often. But I have rewatched that last one.
I enjoy elements of 7 and elements of 9. I feel like 9 crumbles because of 8. Like 9 crumbles because it's under the weight of the promises of 7 and the undermining of 8, and
if your perspective is like, oh, I just think they're entertaining, I can buy that. I'm on board with you there. It's one of those deals where it's like, shut your brain off and watch the pretty colors. It's
one of the things where it's Star Wars with really good
watch
special
the throne
effects.
Room catch on fire.
Have to, you know, sometimes I have to be like, I just like the special effects of the ships and the lights. It's just cool.
Yeah. I mean, so I think there's 3 redeemable qualities about the sequel trilogy, and that is the music and sound design.
Agreed.
The visuals and cinematography.
Agreed.
And some of the acting. With what terrible material they were given, Adam Driver and Mark Hamill acted their pants off. I just hate what they did.
Kylo Ren in himself can actually be a really cool, awesome character, and is honestly a pretty good character. I think 8 did a lot of weird stuff with him. But if we continued from 7 to 9, his story arc is really actually a good Star Wars story arc. That villain that turns back to good. The problem is we didn't have that good middle movie where we see where it happens.
Well, we didn't have any good movie, but
I mean, yeah, but you know what I'm saying.
The idea, it's such a shame because they did genuinely introduce some fresh, compelling concepts. Mm-hmm. Finn, going from Stormtrooper to like, my eyes have been opened. I realize what's wrong about this. And now he wants to do the right thing. And
missed opportunity.
And Kylo Ren, a truly conflicted villain. Like, Vader was all in up until...
That's what I love the most about Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
Vader was killing kids in episode 3. He was all in.
Until he met his son.
Mm-hmm.
And then his whole, that all changed. And so it's like, they shafted Finn.
Oh, absolutely.
Or John Boyega.
Absolutely.
They shafted Adam Driver. So, and like the evidence is right there. The evidence of the poor quality is right there. So, in that first scene in TFA, Finn's a stormtrooper. We haven't met him yet, but his homie gets killed and the blood on his helmet. He's in distress. Even at that point in time, he's like reaching down, trying to help his friend or whatever. Gets back to the ship, has a panic attack, right? 5 minutes later, he's enthusiastically killing stormtroopers. And it's like, you couldn't stick to that fresh idea for more than 2 scenes. And then, probably one of my favorite scenes, one of the few scenes I actually enjoy in the sequel trilogy is in The Last Jedi is certainly the worst offender, but in The Last Jedi, when, Kylo's in his ship or whatever, and he's about to blow up the bridge, you have that close-up shot of him in his cockpit, and he's like, he starts to tear up, and he's thinking about what he's about to do and if he can actually do it. And the acting is so pure there. I buy it. Adam Driver, I buy it.
Shout out.
And then, they go on to do just amazingly silly things with that character among every other character. But the straw that broke the camel's back for me is what they've done to Luke Skywalker.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they absolutely butchered that character. And that's something I could never forgive Disney for personally.
I mean...
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the director wanted to make, whether he would admit it or not, what you're doing when you undermine the character that drastically is you're saying, I want this character to be, like you said, like we've talked about, recontextualized so that he can be a completely different character. And he can serve the purposes that we want him to serve for this series. But you have completely, taken all the goodwill away from the fans, towards your what you're trying to do. Whenever you've done that, whenever you've just said, "This is what I'm doing," and you need to get on board, or you're just not going to enjoy this movie.
Specifically with Luke Skywalker in the sequel trilogy too, it is a perfect example of not having continuity of your characters, because you understand Star Wars original trilogy. You have, and it got heightened more when we got the prequel trilogy, we understood the life and fall of Anakin Skywalker to Darth Vader. You have Luke Skywalker, who, to an extent, understands that his father is this atrociously evil man who is killed, destroyed, fallen to the dark side, all these things, and he still is unwilling, absolutely, wholeheartedly, to give up on him. To then go to Luke Skywalker, who's like, I give up on the Jedi. Not only that, but I'm going to try and have a moment of trying to kill my nephew because I sense some darkness in him. It is the complete opposite of who Luke Skywalker is from Episode 6. And there was no point in the sequel trilogy where they said or pointed out that, like, what happened to make him think that way. It doesn't make sense continuity-wise.
They don't even make the slightest attempt to justify it. And so you have this huge time gap. And the next time Luke appears on our screen, he's just a different person. Compounded with, they don't really try at all to justify it within their own story.
Yep.
And so I wrote this thing. This came to me, and I'm just going to read it because this perfectly sums up just how I feel. Because some may think it's kind of silly, but I watched the OT as a child.
Absolutely.
Luke Skywalker, like. I think that's an important story for children, but young boys specifically to witness is the growth of Luke Skywalker.
I mean, Luke Skywalker is, to this day, probably my favorite Star Wars character.
Yeah.
And I will stand, it's generic, but I'll stand by that. He's probably mostly because of his story arc.
Regularly regarded as one of the greatest characters in cinema of all time. And this just kind of came to me, and I just think it perfectly sums up my encompassing feelings. So I wrote here, if you were to ask the people making these modern sequels to legacy franchises what they think keeps the fans coming back, I would imagine they would say the stories that have been told, and more importantly, the characters. At least I would hope that's what they would say. So I find it utterly bizarre that they seem to have a powerful compulsion to ruin them and their achievements from their original films and undo their growth and development for the sake of telling an awful, watered-down story in which oftentimes they're secondary characters. If you were going to do that, just don't include them. Use the world, use the lore. Your own characters tell something new. Why do they have to destroy our beloved characters so thoroughly? And it's classic, meticulous, and thorough character assassination. Just then, and nowhere is this more painful than the sequel trilogy with Luke Skywalker. He has a classic hero's journey, going from a young, naive, poor farm boy to a powerful Jedi and hero on a galaxy-wide scale. Along the way, gaining skills, wisdom, and confidence while forming friendships and enduring hardships, culminating in a face-off with the greatest force of evil the galaxy has ever known. And he ends up winning not by killing, but by securing the redemption of his father in the process. As George Lucas always said, Star Wars is a story about family. Mm-hmm. Never giving up on his family or his duty to do what's right, only for us to see him attempt to kill his nephew, his best friend's son, his sister's son, in his sleep, because he is afraid he might be influenced by the dark side. It's only a movie, it's only a fictional story, but it was exceedingly painful to watch. I looked up to Luke Skywalker as a child, and now he will be remembered as a grumpy old man who ran and hid when his friends needed him most.
A thought, going to sequels and talking about specifically about Luke Skywalker. I feel like at times they probably did this to create some form of tension, obviously, some more story arc. The thing is, there's a good example of how to cause tension with a character without changing the aspect of the character. A good example, and I talk about this because I'm a big Legends reader. I've read a lot of legend stuff. Mm-hmm. Luke Skywalker in those books is Luke Skywalker to a fault, the same Luke Skywalker in the movies, to the point where he forgives people too much for darkness that they've done, and it becomes a point of conflict with other characters in the story, of them being like, I cannot train under you because you are letting a mass murderer train at your academy. That is how you have conflict in a story while keeping a character to their roots. Yeah. Luke Skywalker forgives to a fault and understands the fault of the dark side. In the books, he himself goes to the dark side at one point and then gets brought back. And so he, even more so now, is, I understand that you can always come back from the dark side. Conflict, but you don't need to change a character to get conflict.
That's not a conviction you give up on.
No, not at all.
Especially since you were right and it worked.
I know. You saved the galaxy doing that.
And the people who are like, oh, the sequels are great, I love them. I'm just like, how though? Why? Pay attention to how Luke acts. He's not Luke Skywalker. Not my Luke Skywalker, okay?
Hashtag.
Well, I think we've thoroughly butchered the sequel trilogy. How about we talk about some good sequels?
Yeah.
Let's go and talk about some good sequels.
I'm ready to mix it up.
What is so you mentioned Empire Strikes Back.
Absolutely.
If you were going to mention a sequel that you think embodies, basically like makes a good argument for a sequel, what would you say is a good one?
I have a very deep attachment to two in particular, and that is Terminator 2 and Aliens.
Okay.
And I think the character drives both. I think story is a little more involved in the case of Aliens. I think story is a little bigger factor in terms of justification of the sequel. But both have character and story in spades. And what I love about T2 is in the first one, Sarah Connor is a young, innocent, just everyday girl. Very plain, just your average, average gal trying to make it.
Nurse?
She's a waitress.
Okay.
Yeah. She's really young in the story. I think she's meant to be like 20 in the first one.
No, bro. If she was a nurse, she would have just let herself get killed right away.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds morbid, but that's facts right there. But for context, I'm a critical care nurse, so I could sympathize with that. But
poor man.
Hey, man, you got to see it straight up. I don't think I could ever do what you do. But so young, innocent gal, normal job, and just the most unbelievable situation is thrust upon her.
Yeah.
I mean, to the point where time travel is involved.
Sounds realistic to me, man.
She has no option. She has no option.
And that's the thing. She has no choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so over the course of T1, she absorbs what, Michael Bihn's character, Kyle Reese, is telling her. And just like try to picture if someone told you that, like, I'm from the future. A lot of what they're saying, there is some evidence there for that. Right. And he tells her, you're going to birth the savior of humanity. I'd be like,
Mary?
I think I'll just let the Terminator kill me. I'm not ready for that. No thanks.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot.
Yeah. And she kind of gleans things from Kyle. She has an inner strength that hasn't been tested yet. And through the story of T1 that's forced to come out of her, she loses her lover, who she's met very recently. And a lot of, one of the major criticisms of T1, which, all criticisms be damned in that case, is like, he just comes back in time and they immediately, fall in love and have a kid or whatever.
It was fate. Dang it.
It is, yeah. So it's fate. It was rushed, I'll give you that, but I think they do just enough.
They do.
Because,
they do.
To be fair, people fall in love far less nowadays.
It's the conflict. I mean, like, when people go through very dramatic, intense conflicts, they can be drawn together and the chemistry can develop very quickly.
It's because of what Kyle Reese tells her. I came back to meet the legend. I believed in John Connor and I wanted to know where he came from. I wanted to meet his mother. I came back to meet the legend.
Swoon.
And she recognizes exactly. Guys, if you want game, just tell him you came back in time for him, okay? And she recognizes what he's done. He's given up on his world that he's known. Frankly, kind of bad.
Crappy world.
But he left his friends and everything he knew to go to a time he was not familiar with to protect this woman. And she's like, he did all that for me. Not just for the sake of humanity, but also personal level. He wanted to meet me. And so she gains strength through the course of the movie, defeats the Terminator. In the second one, we do have a time jump, but it's where we see her now that makes sense. After going through this hardship, gaining the evidence, I mean, she came face to face with the Terminator, almost killed her lover right in front of her eyes. Or rather, he sacrificed himself.
She has a date, too. Doesn't she have a date for the end of the world?
She knows the date.
Yeah.
And we learn in T2 that she spent all this time in the interim, as young John puts it, shacking up with whoever she could, that she felt she could learn from, learning skills to prepare John for his future. She sacrificed her own emotional and mental well-being because of the weight of what was put upon her.
Yeah.
And for the sake of her son. And she's spent a lot of this time in a psychiatric hospital, which kind of in turn has made her a little crazy. It's kind of ironic in that way. And her thinking is always the safety and protection of her son, to the point where that when John and the T-800 rescue her from the psychiatric hospital and from the T-1000, they They get into a fight. They get away. The first thing she does is turn around and hug him. And he thinks she's just, I love you. I'm happy to see you. She's checking him for wounds. Mm-hmm. She's hugging him, checking him for wounds. And it's the little details like that make for great character progression and character development. She's a totally different person from what we've seen in T1, but that is the logical endpoint.
She's a completely different person in a way that makes sense.
Right.
Like there's obviously growth that happened, that needed to happen.
In that case, it's like, it wouldn't have made sense if she wasn't a completely different person.
Yeah.
Right.
If she was just the same person, it would have been like, well, what have you been doing with your past, with your life?
Yeah. She got, hit by the truck of fate, like she's going to be different.
But the devil is in the details. And we get to see later in the movie when she confronts Dyson. She goes to his house to essentially assassinate him, prevent him from finishing.
See, like the scientist that's going to invent something.
Oh, that's right.
So he works, going to bring an end to the world.
Yeah, he works for Cyberdyne, which collected the specimens left over from T1, and he's like working on them. Right. And she's at her moment. She's about to and she can't do it because that bit of her, that humanity, that gentleness is left in there. And it's incredibly satisfying to watch a character change but not lose themselves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's a great movie.
It is.
It's been a long time. I might have to go rewatch them.
You should.
That's that's like core memory kind of movie.
Yeah.
Like I watched that with my dad a long time ago and special stuff. But that's a very good example. Yeah. And that's a good example too of like where sequels, you sometimes whenever you get you have a movie that is such a good continuation, and it ends in such a satisfying way. The John Connor part of it, I feel like that the mystery, the mystique of the John Carter savior of mankind character was such a compelling thing of this, like, how is this little baby going to save the world? How is this teenage kid going to save the world? And the mystery of that almost it's better than showing you how it all plays out. And that's where a lot of the continuations, the further sequels, I think made it less compelling, less interesting whenever you had the Christian Bale one where Christian Bale's John Connor. And now it wasn't a horrible movie, in my opinion. It was there's an interesting element there. But as far as what it did do for the character John Carter, John Connor, sorry, that's different, completely series. But for the character John Connor and
does deserve a sequel.
Yeah, does it?
I like that movie.
Okay, maybe we should come back to it. Just the character of John Connor, the mystique of that character in Terminator 1 and 2 was very compelling, and I just feel like it really, in my opinion, wasn't worth seeing him in these future iterations.
That seems to be a common mistake present in bad sequels, is they pull the veil back too far.
Yeah. Sometimes that mystery is important.
Explaining everything.
That's why I despise Solo. They just had to give an explanation for every little aspect of his character.
And that's not even a sequel.
No.
Josh, what's a sequel you?
Yeah.
Sequel I like.
Give us a good one.
Mm-hmm.
One that I can actually talk about.
I mean, preferably, yeah.
So
I guess.
So I'm not gonna. I'm gonna just briefly mention this one. So Tron Legacy. I'm not like a original Tron like diehard. I've seen that movie and it's definitely interesting, very interesting concepts and stuff, but it's very dated. The special effects and the acting and stuff are very dated, and to the point that it's hard to really appreciate it the way you would have appreciated it, seeing it. And I think that's kind of the strength of Tron Legacy, is it takes those concepts and it takes them into
Is Tron Legacy a sequel?
Yes, it is. I
thought it was a remake.
It is not a remake. It's literally the original some of the original characters from Tron in the future, in like 20 years in the future or something like that, maybe more. So one of the characters like sons, I think the main character's son, and he's like the heir to the company, but he doesn't care about it, and things like that. But so it's the story of him kind of understanding what his father was so consumed with, and realizing there's this world that needs to be saved inside this virtual world. And it's just, you know, another one of those, it takes very good example of a character, like a Luke Skywalker type character that gets taken to a very cool level, like where you would want to see that character go in the future.
Yeah.
You know, with, I forget the name of the actor, that plays the character that I'm thinking of, the older character.
The dad?
Yeah, it's not his dad. It's his dad's friend. That
I may be way off here. Was it Jeff Bridges?
Is Jeff Bridges? Okay. You're right. Yeah, the character Jeff Bridges.
You were way
plays.
on, apparently.
The character Jeff Bridges plays. It also worked too because you had a digital version of Jeff Bridges that made sense that he didn't look completely photorealistic because you're in this virtual world. But that's a super interesting, like that. There's a super interesting story in there with like him creating this character, you know, kind of classic story of like creating this thing with this directive that it takes too far, you know. But yeah, that was a really great sequel because it took those concepts that were really, really interesting, fun, and with the visuals of the modern day and good acting, good storytelling, I think did a really compelling thing and did a really good like world building stuff. I think there's a sequel planned for that movie, but it's been years.
It's been in the making.
Yeah, they've been talking about it for years. So I don't know if it'll ever happen, but that's definitely on my list for borderline. It's not a standalone, but in some ways it feels like kind of borderline a standalone that deserves a sequel. But bigger than that, I would say, is Captain America. The second Captain America movie. Winter Soldier.
That's probably one of my... I'm not like a huge Marvel guy, but Winter Soldier. I'm a Winter Soldier enjoyer.
It's very...
One of my favorite Marvel movies.
There's a very compelling... You know, you have Captain America, which is set during the era of World War II, you know, and very high ideals, you know, of that era. And then he all of a sudden wakes up and you obviously see in Avengers and things like that he's had some difficulty adjusting, right? And so that conflict is just like kind of the centerpiece of Winter Soldier. And the way they do it in two ways. They take a character that I did not expect him to come back. Whenever I saw, you know, has not been out as long as Star Wars, but it's another one of those like culturally kind of like understood things that Bucky Barnes comes back, you know. When I saw Bucky Barnes fall off the train in the first Captain America, I did not think he was ever coming back.
Yeah.
It did not leave me feeling like there's a cliffhanger there, there's more going on there. You know, obviously, if you were a comic book reader, you probably would have thought, maybe he died off screen, so maybe something's going to happen there. But so whenever he starts, there's this realization that this is his best friend from Captain America that's been twisted, and he's also kind of a super soldier that's you know, been kept around. And then so you have the character, internal kind of character conflict there, and then this external conflict that's also a character conflict of the moral aspect of this supposed safeguarding technology that's going to like identify people that if they exhibit certain aberrations of just personality, basically, that would lead towards the potential towards like crime or whatever, then they're just gonna snipe you from a drone.
Your iPhone is listening at all times.
Yeah, at the time that came out too, that was actually a very big conversation that was happening. So I was like, wow, this is very interesting to see this be explored in a Marvel movie, you know, and it was it didn't go as deep as it could have gone, but it went deeper than surface, you know? And to see Captain America stand up on that side of the argument and really lay it all on the line, it just was really a really cool thing. It was a really amazing thing. And then in the middle of it, hanging in the balance is the life of his best friend at the same exact time. So, I mean, there's just so much compelling about it. You know, you're going deeper into Captain America, which I think a lot of people don't like Captain America as a character because of the seemingly better than thou kind of way he holds himself, you know? But that story, I feel like, very humanized him and kind of, it was kind of like an argument for Captain America. It was like an argument for why you need someone, even if they're annoying and even if it's like, oh my word, like get over your ideals and stuff like that. But it was kind of an argument for ideals. I feel like in a way, like it's like, this is what is possible without stiff ideals, you know? But that's my rant.
I love the fight towards or at the end, essentially, when they're like in a fist fight on the carrier, and there's that break in the fight and the callback to the line. I'm with you to the end of the line. Yeah, I love that.
That scene is also really good continuity of character. Once again, of Captain America being who he is, and he's not changing despite all the crap that's going on, and despite his friend coming back as a villain. He's not changing. There's
a good way to, and this is another thing sequels like to do. There's a good way to parrot iconic lines, and there's a bad way to do it. And I think that's an example of like, it makes sense for him to say it in that moment. It's impactful, and his delivery is like, he is conflicted because he's trying to do what he thinks is right, but also, you know, like you said, his friend hangs in the balance. And he, like, I think his thinking in that moment is like, I don't know what's going to happen, but no matter what, I'm with you to the end of the line.
He does the
it's almost like a little sliver of hope in him that
Bucky's still there somewhere. Yeah,
he does the I can do this all day line too, there, doesn't he? Where he's getting his bow whooped, where Bucky first comes in to help him out.
It's been a while since
from the first movie. With
I'd be surprised if they didn't do that callback. I just don't remember.
I think that might be the callback I'm thinking of, actually, where he says, "I can do this all day." He's getting his, you know.
No, he definitely does. He definitely does say I'm with you to the end.
He
of the
may
line.
say it in the same scene for all.
I think he might have said it because I think
I know he says I'm with you at the end of the line whenever his face is like basically a. You know,
it could be another scene, but maybe
actually it might be later in the fight where it's like kind of over. Yeah, in fact, I think it is. The fight's kind of done at that point.
That's when he says that,
and he's essentially beaten Captain America down, and even in his like, yeah, you're right.
I remember
even in his like defeated state, he's like, I'm still with you.
Yeah,
because I believe you're in there.
Yeah, but I think he says that earlier in the fight too.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Which I mean,
another good callback, another good way to call back though of you know.
And that just reminds me of the scene, and not to harp on it, but in T2 where the cops, the SWAT team is like surrounded the facility, and they're like it's all out of war at this point. They're trying to kill him, and the Terminator is just like doing the most work to ensure their safety, and he like. They're in the elevator hiding, and he you know, so the Terminator's formed a plan. He knows what he's going to do to get him out. He's just, I'll be back. You know, he's like, stay here, I'll be back. You know, he adds a little to it. He comes back. And another thing that I forgot to mention is like, so we talked about the change up, make it different.
Yeah.
Going from the T-800 being the villain.
Right. Yeah. That's a good.
Now we've sent him back to save you. And also there's a more advanced villain.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
That's also
He's
a great
guy now.
That was a great way to set up conflict between characters.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is to use a villain as now a hero in the story. Is just a great way
where
to
she
set up
sees
conflict.
him, and like when she sees him, she's just like panic mode. All my worst fears have come true in this moment.
It's all come rushing back to her, and then
he's like
great way.
there to save her.
Even then, even after learning what he's there for, she still struggles with it.
Yeah.
And then the opposite that we see in Captain America is turning a hero into a villain.
Yeah.
And I think that's just as effective, if not more so. Which reminds me of The Dark Knight. You either die a hero or live long enough to become a villain.
Yeah. It's a good line.
Yeah, it's a good line.
It's a good line.
which I think segues into a sequel you might want to talk about.
I think I got The Empire in.
Okay.
That's a sequel I'm always down to talk about. I got other sequels that I enjoy, but Dark Knight's obviously one of them. And
yeah,
I will probably forever regard the Heath Ledger Joker as the single greatest performance in any film.
Really? Yes. Oh. Animation-wise, though, you can't beat Mark Hamill's Joker voice.
That is very iconic.
It's very iconic.
That is very iconic.
But yes.
the whole performance, though, which I mean, I think Mark Hamill could probably do a pretty good like Joker.
He does a Joker-esque character in the Flash TV show.
Yeah, I know.
Which is hilarious.
Yeah, the trickster. Yeah.
I could see it, but
same voice.
Just
Heath Ledger did though. It was a different type of Joker too.
What an unbelievable stroke of brilliance for Heath Ledger to put that out. And I'm sad because he's an actor I enjoy in other things.
Yeah.
The Patriot, among others, but 10 Things I Hate About You.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of
a Knight's Tale.
And that's actually one of my favorite films of all time.
I've watched it.
I'm trying to get him to watch it.
Okay. I'm going to show you that film, Jerm, because it's been a while since I've seen it.
All
but
right, I'll do it.
I am so utterly convinced by his performance in The Dark Knight.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's...
Well, what's convinced? I mean, you're convinced. It's like... You're not convinced. You're just convinced he's chaos embodied. I mean, it's like there's no like the whole thing about him having like multiple origins, where he keeps telling someone, "You want to know how I got these scars?" and he keeps telling a different story every time.
I love it.
I mean, that is the part where it's just like it's unhinged, like to a different level.
I mean,
so nuanced.
We can do a whole episode on him as a villain. Because he makes probably in recent years probably one of the best villains ever written. Just something about him of just like he is just kind of chaos, and it's not a villain that you think is good or you agree with to an extent. Maybe something
you can buy it though,
but you can buy that he is what he believes what he's saying.
You buy his ideals, not the way he goes about them.
Yes,
which same for Thanos, I think, in Infinity War, not Endgame.
Yeah,
Infinity War, but just chaos through order, though.
Yes,
he says I'm an agent of chaos, which implies like, and he tells Harvey directly, I just do things,
but he's very aware of what he's doing.
Yes.
I don't know. The meme went around. I don't know how accurate it is as far as the filmmaking goes, but there's that meme that always went around of when he's having that scene with Harvey with the gun. And he even points the gun in his own mouth. He's
holding the hammer.
On the hammer.
Yeah.
And it's just like he always has a plan.
Yeah.
You had plans.
But like I said, we could go on. We could talk about this thing for a whole episode. Talk about him for a whole episode.
I could certainly talk about the Heath Ledger Joker for a whole episode.
We'll do what do you say, some real quick guilty pleasure sequels.
Yeah. So like to clarify, a sequel that's generally considered like mediocre to bad, a sequel to a superior film that you still enjoy watching.
So I think if I have the one I think is the strongest on my list as far as guilty pleasure. And this is more about, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but this is more about what I've heard over the years and what I kind of know is like the kind of consensus is, okay, so you had a movie that came out that was a indie film, more of an indie film, low budget, and they had a small cast, it was a sci-fi film, breakout role for Vin Diesel, Pitch Black, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So you have Pitch Black, right? And then a few years later, I think this is probably post Fast and Furious for Vin Diesel. You have a sequel, Chronicles of Riddick. Very different tone. Very different. Like Pitch Black was more like
great movie,
sci-fi horror, suspenseful, very like, big twists as far as like this anti-hero, very much more villainous kind of character, but kind of like a chaotic, I don't know if you call him, what would you call him? He's a very a chaotic character, but not an evil character. Like a chaotic neutral, maybe.
Character. Anti-hero type of character?
Anti-hero for sure, yeah. But so then...
He's a big gray.
He may not be he may not be an anti-hero in Pitch Black. He may be more just chaotic neutral, and then in Chronicles of Riddick, he's more of an anti-hero. but yeah, so Chronicles of Riddick is much more. It's a big budget film, a lot more world building, a lot more actors and things like that, and a much bigger story. And a lot of people, that's not what they were looking for that character, to see that character in that kind of film. And I've heard just lots of kind of just disappointment in that. I loved Chronicles of Riddick.
I also very much enjoyed that movie.
I loved the world building. I thought seeing that character of Riddick on this big stage, and just like there's this whole all these people and their senses of propriety and like how things are gonna how like the world's gonna be saved, and then or the Necromonger like Space Roman Empire, you know, how they're going to you know, gain power and the politics that are going on there. And then you have this just wild card, Riddick. No allegiance to anyone. You know, not all he's just like, I'm just annoyed that you think that you can just be in charge, and I'm just going to take you down just because. He's got a personal conviction that just completely throws a wrench in their spokes. Yeah. But he doesn't have any like true investment in it. He's just like, nah, man. Yeah. I mean, like, he's like, I'll do it, but, you know, and there's like a prophecy in there too about someone from the planet he was born on. So there's like some personal stakes they put in there of like your planet was kind of like purged because there was, you know, some stuff about you, which still I think is still compelling. I don't know why. It's a weird mix to me, but for me it works. And oddly, and just like random little shout out, there's you know the like cat-like thing on the. Have you seen Chronicles of Riddick? So I don't believe, or if I did, I don't recall it. I don't think I saw Pitch Black. I did see Chronicles. Okay, and I just remember being like, oh, Vin Diesel's actually like really compelling as like kind of an action hero. And I remember the first time I was almost certainly not even 10 years old yet when I saw Chronicles of Riddick, but I remember laughing the first time I saw him with his like goggles on, and then by the end of the movie I was like, this dude is hard. I need goggles. Yeah.
You know there's a third Riddick movie, right?
Oh yeah, and it's pretty good.
That one's pretty good. That one harkens more back to Pitch Black.
Yeah, it does more Pitch Black. I remember being super entertained by Chronicles of Riddick.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
Yeah. But there's this this planet he ends up on, which is like a prison planet, and basically everybody, all the prison is underground because of the sun. The sun, when the sun comes up, they're so close to the sun that it just scorches the earth every day. And there's this like cat-like creature that they like sick on the prisoners at some points.
I wish.
And that creature is partial visually, especially inspiration for character in my story.
Oh, that's cool.
The Hellcat. He like dumps the water on himself in order to expose himself to this. And I'm just thinking, what? Dude, what a BA. What a hard move. Like, this scorches people to their bones, and he's like, I'm just going to use a little water and we'll just see what happens. I mean, it's kind of the classic anti-hero, you know, posture, but like, he's got the girl that he like has this like, you know, I think she was it was implied that she was maybe on that planet in Pitch Black or something. Yeah. When she was a kid. And now she's grown up and she's like, feels like she has something to prove to him, and he just doesn't care. Sigma. He could care less. He does come down and save her, but that's just because maybe he does care a little bit, but he's like, he doesn't care if anyone thinks he cares, you know? Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, I remember being like super about Vin Diesel in that role. It's, you know, people with critics, right? Critics don't like the tropes and the like, especially when people lean in super hard on the tropes. But as far as storytelling goes, people, I think in general, the masses do like tropes because it's something. It's like when it starts to happen, it's like, oh, I know what's happening here, and it's not like you think about it in the detail, but the familiarity of it. You know, and then the familiarity of it is kind of a promise that this is what you're going to get. When you get that, you're satisfied. I see where this is going, but I'm on board. Right. And like you mentioned with A Knight's Tale, that's actually been one of my favorite movies since I was a child. That's like super cookie cutter. Yeah.
But the story is no less satisfying.
I like myself a good trope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very tropey characters all
That's a
around.
great movie.
Yeah.
That movie is one of the most rewatchable movies, too. A Knight's Tale.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Good, great standalone.
I have 3 separate physical copies of that.
Oh, really?
I have my original DVD, I have the Blu-ray, and then I have the special edition Blu-ray with like the extended, like the deleted scenes added back in.
Yeah.
I just love that movie.
Nice.
Guilty pleasure sequel, Germ?
So I could not think of a guilty pleasure movie sequel. I haven't watched movies recently, so that's probably why.
Now, is there any movie that is not, it's not a guilty pleasure, but it should be?
What do you mean?
People don't realize it's bad.
No, that you don't realize.
Oh, yeah, you don't.
Probably, honestly, a lot of movies. To be fair, here's my thing with movies. I find enjoyment in most movies. Honestly, the only movie that I can really think of recently that I just did not like at all is Episode 8.
That's not even that recent.
In recent years, I mean.
Yeah.
I hate it with a passion, so I'm on board.
So, like, but otherwise, like, I'm one of those people, like, I go to movie theaters, I'll enjoy a movie. 65, I liked that movie. We went and just saw it.
Yeah, it was...
it wasn't the best movie, don't get me wrong. It wasn't...
It was mediocre great. As hell, but I'll watch anything with Adam Driver.
But I loved it. I mean, I was like, I'm about this. I was hyped up,
It was entertaining.
You know, so it's one of those things where, like, a movie, for me, just doesn't... I don't know. I just enjoy most movies just because I just enjoy the aspect of watching a movie when I get the chance to sit down and watch one.
Yeah.
But a sequel that I have that is a guilty pleasure of mine that that at least initially, it might be getting a little bit better now since it's been some years, but initially was not very much liked, is a game, Dark Souls 2. A lot of people did not like Dark Souls 2 after Dark Souls 1 because they changed a lot of things. It was a little bit easier, and the way they did just different aspects of the game were different. I loved Dark Souls 2 and still to this day like Dark Souls 2, and we'll stand by that. I don't really have much of a reason. It's probably one because I actually played 2 before I played 1.
Yeah.
Dark Souls 2 was my introduction to Dark Souls. So that's probably a big part of why I'm a big fan of it.
It exists right in here.
Exactly.
Yeah, right in your nostalgia center.
Exactly, and I love it. And so...
that might be the way to do it then. Go from 2 to 1, which is, I imagine, is considered better in quality.
Story... Not necessarily story, Dark Souls has got weird with their story, but like, just in general, people just tend to like 1 better. Story-wise, yeah, lore-wise, the way they go about bosses, the way they go about encounters, stuff like that. And it is more difficult. It is more of a Souls-like game. 3, people like 3 a lot because it went back to more of how 1 was. Mm-hmm. And even I, playing 3, can be like, oh yeah, it definitely goes back to a little bit more how 1 is, you know? Yeah. But I like 2 a lot. I think
Halo 2 exists in a similar realm where people kind of trashed the actual gameplay and like the difficulty level of how like the hardest mode was like impossible, not hard, just like impossible. Yeah. And then, you know, everybody loves 3. That's a classic.
That game. Oh yeah. Gosh,
I wish it was a movie actually.
Yeah. But otherwise, I can't think of. I mean, I was gonna say Attack of the Clones because I like that movie, but you prefaced with that follows a great movie, and Phantom Menace isn't even seen as a great movie. And I like Phantom Menace too, but it's definitely not seen as a great movie. So I can't really use that as a guilty pleasure because people don't like both those movies. So.
You say both of them.
Yeah. I do like both of them, to be fair.
I would say that you get in on a technicality on that one. I would certainly say Phantom Menace is better.
Attack of the Clones is a guilty pleasure of mine, and I think because it was my brother's, oddly enough, it was my brother's favorite movie, Star Wars movie, and so we watched it a lot. And they're just, I don't know. I just grew up on the prequels, man.
The dialogue.
I know, but also if you accept that the dialogue is dumb and just roll with
soaked in cringe.
I love it so much.
That's a different kind of
your skin is so soft.
Yeah,
the prequels. There's some good stuff. They're flawed, but there's some good stuff in there. And I mean, Revenge of the Sith. Who doesn't love
that?
Revenge of the Sith?
But forever, my favorite quote is just. I don't like sand. It's
I hate sand.
It gets everywhere.
Padme's like, that's the one that did it for me.
Not like you. Your skin is soft and smooth.
Yeah.
But yeah, I couldn't think of a movie other than that, really, because like I said, I just haven't watched movies recently. So
yeah,
it's good. It's also no books that I've read that don't have good. Most books have sequels nowadays, so it's not really a good standalone book I've read. Elantris needs a sequel.
Yes, for sure.
And Warbreaker.
If anything, just because Brandon Sanderson's writing has improved since he published that one. That was his first published novel.
What about you, Alex?
What's yours?
My guilty pleasure sequel is Jurassic Park: The Lost World.
Yeah. 2, right?
2, yeah. So
not watched any of the Jurassic Park movies.
The opening.
Oh man, we have work to do.
Did you just watch Jurassic Park?
No, I've never
Indiana
watched.
Jones.
I watched Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Oh, buddy. Okay.
That's a great sequel. Hold up.
We've got work to do. But actually, Temple of Doom
Doom's great.
It gets silly, but
it gets really silly. Yeah. But it's great.
Oh my word! Falling out of the plane.
That whole movie is a riot from the beginning.
It's like 3 different movies too.
It starts off. It starts off, and I'm like, "Is this a sequel? Did we miss something?
Is he 007? Like, what's happening?
Like, what's going on?"
I love the head. It's been a while since I've seen him, but the head priest guy. He's a good time.
The whole movie is just
He's a good time.
Steph hated it, but it's phenomenal.
It's so great.
That definitely applies.
Okay, there you go.
But so, just for reference, I guess my top 3 movies of all time are Alien, Aliens, and Jurassic Park in that order. I remember vividly watching Jurassic Park as like 6 or 7 years old in my tidy whities, just watching it. And then after it was done, again, mommy, again, I just watch it in a loop. I wore that VHS out. But so then I was, of course, young when I saw The Lost World. And I realize now what's wrong with it. But I just found the concept of them like being trapped on the island with like no infrastructure of protection. Their goal is like to capture the dinosaurs and take them back, and our heroes are they're just like naturalists. They just want the island to be left alone. But the whole sequence of them on the island is really fun. It's just a good adventure. The double T-Rex attack I love.
At the beginning, you mean?
At the end. Or no, sorry, like kind of in the middle.
You're speaking things to me and I don't know.
Wait.
Oh, yeah.
That is in the middle, where they've got the baby, right?
Yes, and they reset its leg. And the parents show up.
That is a, like, epic in movie history scene of them, like, they're like trying to push them off the cliff and stuff.
Yeah, the parents are trying to push them on the cliff. Off the cliff, they're stuck in this, like, just
huge, like, trailer thing.
Yeah. And I just remember being like, oh, man, I don't know if I could imagine a more terrifying situation. And, poor Eddie, and
someone had to die.
Yeah. And then we get to the end, which was rewritten and re-edited and I think even reshot in some spots. And that's where it completely falls apart.
In San Francisco?
Yeah. But I'm not going to go into detail too much because I want to watch these with you too now, Jeremy. But
we'll have some movie nights.
Yes, exactly. But when Malcolm's daughter, I will say this, I won't go into detail because just, conceptually it's hilarious. But when Malcolm's daughter defeats the Velociraptor through the power of gymnastics.
Oh, now I have to watch this movie.
And the only
it's thing like, I'm done.
Yeah.
That's it.
The only thing he has to say afterwards is, you were cut from the team?
Okay, I'm sold. You sold me on this movie with that right there.
The main character's daughter defeats a Velociraptor through the power of gymnastics.
I have never wanted to watch these movies until just now because of this.
And that sentence really sounds like there's more to it, but there is not.
And that is amazing.
That is the scene.
That makes me happy.
So it gets really silly, but I just
in the
love
best
it.
way though.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. I'm okay. I have to come back a little bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
Coming back.
I'm realizing I have a guilty pleasure sequel that I forgot about.
Hit me.
Jurassic Park 3.
Oh no. Oh no. Alan.
I love that character. I love Alan.
I do too.
And so, we didn't get to see him in Jurassic Park 2. He wasn't I don't remember if he was in it at all. So, In Jurassic Park 3, he's the main character. You know, he's the one who's on the island with the dinosaurs. They contrive, you know, these humans. Word is just not getting out. Like, apparently word is not getting out to the masses that, hey, we need to stop messing with dinosaur islands. Because...
that should have been a given from the start, to be fair.
Because you have this, like, super insane scenario of this parents, super affluent parents, they're like... we're gonna try and get as close as we can to Dinosaur Island. And lo and behold, you know, surprise, surprise, their son gets, like, they get tangled up in a tree or something. Son gets stranded on the island, and he's, like, having to survive. And that's probably the part that probably a lot of people get off board with. It's like this little kid just does not buy that this kid is surviving.
That's where they turn the floopiness up to 10 and rip the knob off. That one.
But I just love Alan being the one leading these like crazy parents. It's so fun.
He's the only character that's trying to speak sense, and he's like,
it's just like nobody is appropriately responding to the fact that they're on an island with dinosaurs, except for him, and I enjoy it. And then you've got a little bit of a fun dynamic with the raptors, and interesting little twist, right? You got a twist because there's like learning more about the raptors, but also it's just fun seeing the big dinosaurs. I mean, like that's just like this. There's like the kid in you that just loves seeing the Spinosaurus and the T-Rex fight, you know, and the scene where the Stegosauruses are like flipping around and Alan's like rolling around and trying. I mean, like all that stuff. I just love it. And even the dinosaur, like it's like at one point the dinosaur eats a phone. And this is like a recurring thing it's a satellite phone, and every time someone calls a satellite phone, you hear it ringing inside the dinosaur.
It's like previously established in the movie that you know when the big dinosaurs are like coming up on you because you can like feel their footsteps.
Right.
And this one just like activates its stealth ability.
It's in the water.
And then they hear the satellite phone that has been eaten. And they turn around, it's like, it's just standing there staring at them.
You guys are once again selling me on these movies.
It's literally just standing there looking at them like, hello.
While it's ringing.
And then the way they get away from it, they just close the door.
Cinematic masterpiece is what this sounds like.
I mean,
if you want to laugh at like how bad a movie is, but still have a good time, the Jurassic Park sequels 2 and 3 are really good. Those are a good time.
We'll have to movie night and watch them.
Those are a good time, man.
So there.
That was a great example.
Well,
can't myself.
One more topic at least, if we have the time. A film you enjoy that you wish had a sequel.
Quick fire it.
Yeah,
sure. Let's see what I got. I had a few. Probably. Okay. So, I don't know if I can get by on this one. I don't know if you'll let me by.
Let's see.
Have you seen Pacific Rim?
Yes.
Doesn't it have a sequel?
Yes, but we don't talk
That's
about
the problem.
That's the problem.
Okay. I've never seen Pacific Rim.
The first one isn't particularly great either, but...
That's a guilty pleasure standalone.
No, I enjoyed it.
Okay.
I enjoyed it. It's
critically.
It's kind of floopy, but I enjoyed it.
So the first Pacific Rim, you know, you got giant robots versus giant monsters, right? And there's something about the aesthetic of it, the aesthetic of the machines. They've got this really cool world building thing of this. They're drifting. It's called drifting, where in order to control these things, the like neural load has to be shared between two people that have a good good chemistry. So a lot of times, like husband and wife, siblings,
you and I.
You know, I think we could make it happen. I'm sure good friends could do it.
I'll stay quiet.
Just like so these world building elements and the aesthetic, the not animals, the kaiju monsters that are developing. And everything's at night too, which is probably a lot of it has to do with special effects and trying to keep things looking good.
I'm sure that was a conscious decision,
but it adds to the aesthetic. It adds to this feeling of like this world of like just on the brink of utter disaster that's barely being kept from a complete Armageddon.
Yeah.
And and I don't know, somehow it all feels really good in the internal consistency. And then a sequel came out. I haven't seen the sequel. On the trailer alone, and I'm glad on reviews. I mean, reviews have confirmed this. The aesthetic is just completely missing. Mm-hmm. It's not Guillermo. It's not the director. It's not Guillermo del Toro. He was, I guess, not able to.
He had scheduling conflicts.
Yeah, scheduling conflicts, and they still greenlit the sequel, and the aesthetics are different. Too much recasting.
Yeah.
And it just looked like, and even like, so one of the things I don't know why, the things that I appreciated so much about the movie is just the weight and the heft of these massive things. You felt it. It's all CG, but you feel how huge these things are, how it seems, because they're so big, when they're moving, it appears as if they're moving very slow. And then when I'm watching the trailer of this for the sequel, it just like, things are way too fluid. Things are way too, there's no impact. There's no weight to it. And so to me, Pacific Rim hasn't really had a true sequel. It hasn't had a really good sequel. And that is something I think I would love to see more of what Guillermo del Toro did in the first Pacific Rim.
I'm on board with you 100% there. So, I think quality-wise, the first one is like very average, but I still love it. Like you said, the aesthetic, I think, you know, it introduced a lot of compelling ideas, the whole like 2 pilot system thing. I felt that there was a lot there that they could have done something with, and I totally agree that I would love to see Guillermo return and do a sequel. Yes, 100%.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What about you, Alex?
For sure. There was a movie, I think it came out in 2014, called Edge of Tomorrow.
Oh, that's on my list too.
Yes.
That's a good. I'm glad I didn't say it.
So, for me, that is like a very surprising one. I enjoy it on a personal level, but I also think it's really good. I don't think it's perfect by any means, but I think it's really good.
It's close.
You know what makes
it's very close.
You know what makes it better? You know it's based off a book, right?
Yes, and I have the book. There's like a book and like a manga and like a graphic novel or something. I have all of them, and I still have to read them.
So the story is actually, from what I remember, pretty different to an extent. But what's great is that the name of the book is called All You Need Is Kill.
Yes.
And that is the best book title in the world ever. Yes. Just so there you go. But yes, I'm 100% on board with you on that one.
There was a period of like 2 to 3 months where I watched that movie at least once a week, every week.
That is
and this time was only like a year and a half ago. Like, this is a very recent time. Like,
it's a good movie.
I love this movie.
Good story.
Good story. They leave it's not time travel. They do some interesting things with time. It's a time loop. Mm-hmm. I think they leave it just vague enough to where it makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I'm also satisfied with how the mechanics work. Like I said, it's not perfect, but it is genuinely very good. And I'm a huge Tom Cruise fan. Mm-hmm. He makes excellent movies. He's a great actor. Mission Impossible Fallout was a fantastic recent sequel. Mm-hmm. Top Gun Maverick, fantastic recent sequel. So he makes good stuff, especially when he gets involved in like sci-fi. Mm-hmm. And so I love his character because he plays kind of like an unorthodox character for him. Mm-hmm. He's apprehensive at first. Mm-hmm.
He's slimy. He's a slimy political military guy.
He's slimy and he's also kind of a coward.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we get to see him transform into like a true hero who like he goes through like, imagine having to live the same day over and over again. I found this really great YouTube video that tallies how many potential loops he lived through. Mm-hmm. And the final count was, and he, you know, a lot of it is left vague to the point where you have to like estimate and make it like a good guess. The final definitive count is like 200, but that is the bare minimum. Mm-hmm. So he has potentially lived the same day in the same scenarios, maybe years. And later in the movie, he does such a great job of displaying how just worn out he is. And oh man, they do great things with character. The story is really good, really compelling.
I think you'll really like the book. I think you'll, if I remember correctly, I also fell in love with this movie, and my dad showed me the book, we both read it, and I remember the book being really good.
As soon as I saw it, and as soon as I discovered it was based on a book and like a graphic novel and whatnot, I just had to buy all the material. I have it all. I just haven't read it yet.
Yeah, I don't know about the graphic novel or the manga, but I know the book was good.
Yeah,
from what I remember.
And what's her name? Blunt.
Emily
Blunt. Yeah. Also very good.
Yeah. She's always good.
Bill Paxton plays a great small character. Which, by the way, Bill Paxton is the only actor to have the distinguished privilege of being killed by the Predator, Alien, and Terminator. Just a little side note there for you. But I would love to see either a sequel, what comes after. I would love to see Cage and Vrataski get to know each other, because I truly believe in my heart that Cage would like try to tell her, you know, everything that happened and try to like befriend her and stuff like that. Or I would love to see a prequel of her experience in the time loop, the battle she has to win.
That would be a very that would be
how she became the Angel of Verdun.
Very justified.
The other title I prefer, but how she had to go through that, and you can in that version you could totally disregard Cage. You don't have to have him in there. You could have her
trying to do the same thing with someone else, maybe.
Well, the guy that she talks about, who she doesn't want to talk with Cage about. Yeah. So you could put another action hero in there.
That's a good point.
Maybe like Gosling. I think Gosling could do that really well.
I think he can do anything.
He's good with sci-fi.
Yeah. So that I would love to see.
Good choice.
I could cry over Ryan Gosling dying.
Yeah.
We could all cry over
Gosling dying. Gosling's great stuff.
Good choice. Good choice. Oh man, I'm gonna have to rewatch that movie.
What about you?
Well,
standalone deserves a sequel.
Once again, I struggle to find. I just have not watched a lot of movies, so I struggle with movies. But I do have a book, which was mentioned earlier.
Standalone.
Warbreaker.
Okay.
Brandon Sanderson novel. Probably one of my favorites, despite all this other stuff.
Give me a little premise. What's it about?
So it's a fantasy novel, straight up fantasy,
like medieval fantasy, or
yes,
okay,
ish,
medieval-ish,
medieval timeline, like swords and magic.
Okay.
You can almost think Greek, maybe, because there's a pantheon.
It is very Greek. There's like a pantheon of gods in it. Okay. That's true. The normal Brandon Sanderson faction, the world building is a character in itself, very phenomenal. Magic system, phenomenal. The storytelling and character development is really good, and you have a cohesive story in the book. But the way the premise is, there's a family, and there's like this pantheon of gods who are like, I don't remember which much, but there's a pantheon of gods, and one of them is the God King, and so there's another family who is like this that has like royal bloodline in them, and so one of the sisters gets married off to the God King, and the sister that was supposed to doesn't end up getting married off. The other sister ends up going, and so the older sister is worried for the younger sister because there's all these different things that are being said about. So she goes over to try and rescue her. Chaos ensues. All those different things. It's a fantasy. It's Brandon Sanderson's story. If you read Brandon Sanderson, you kind of understand to an extent. But you learn about all these different characters. There's twists and turns. One of my favorite characters in all of the Cosmere is in it, Vasher, or Zahel. Such a cool character. But
he has a sword that talks.
He has a sword that talks called Nightblood.
Yeah.
And he just wants
to destroy evil.
He wants to destroy evil.
Yeah.
So as the story goes on, though, you learn more about...
How do you get up over that?
Exactly. You learn more about these characters. You learn a lot about Zahel, or Vasher, about who he is, and like the fact that you... Spoiler, but he's like 1,000 years old, if not more, and is like actually like a major player in the history of the world. But the story lets off, and the reason I want it to be a sequel is because the story lets off of them, the couple main characters kind of walking off with, Vasher and, I cannot remember her name. Vivenna and Nightblood all walking off together. The thing is we see these characters again in a different book, because if you understand Brandon Sanderson, all of his books connect. Mm. And you see these characters again in a different book. Things have changed. The two characters aren't together, and Nightblood, the sword that talks, is not with either of them. He's with a different person. And so I want a sequel explaining what the heck happened.
Yeah.
Why are they separated? What happened? Why are they on a different world? Because they're on a different world at this point.
What came between a man and his sentient sword?
And Vivenna. Why are they now no longer a thing? Vasher explains a little bit as to why he's on where he's at. It has to do with the magic system and all this stuff. So I want a sequel for that for sure. It's just Warbreaker is just consistently one of my favorite of Sanderson's, and that's like it's one of his first, more of his earlier novels too. But it's just the story and the magic system. The magic system deals with like colors and like these things called breaths, and the more breaths you get, which is like the soul of a person, the more like colors are even heightened. Like you get to different heightenings where like you can see different aspects of colors, and like you get perfect pitch later on. But you can also like use these breaths to like I can make like a stray doll and make it alive with some of my breaths. Weird magic system.
Wait, you have to collect souls to do this?
They're like souls to an extent.
Do you have to kill people to do
No. Okay. You can give up your soul. People will sell their breath or soul for money to other people.
What happens to them when they do that?
They stay alive, but they become very drab, I think. And there's actually, I think they're called like the drab or something like that, where they're like, their life is just very dull. It's not very colorless. It's very interesting. The magic.
Yeah.
The other thing I thought of was Bloodborne. I want Bloodborne too.
That's the game as well, right? Does that exist?
It's a Soulsborne game.
Okay, is that like a spin-off game?
Same game, same company that made Dark Souls, but different world.
Okay.
If you like Lovecraft, you know who Lovecraft is or his world. If you like Lovecraftian,
Harry Potter Lovecraft.
It literally is like you start off the game, you're like, oh, this is cool. We're just hunting beasts, and then you get halfway through, and you're like, oh my god, this is Lovecraftian, and there are like deep horrors and
people
like gods and like
insane.
it's literally like heavily Lovecraftian.
I don't know about that.
Very, very cool lore. Gameplay is some of my favorite aesthetically very what's I'm looking for. Cannot think of the name of but aesthetically the game is so pleasing.
Eldritch horror? I know.
Yes, but like the cities and the places that you're in are very
is it more Victorian?
Victorian, very Victorian aesthetic.
Okay. That's a very Lovecraft thing.
Yes. It's just it's very good. It's just such a good game in general, and it's widely accepted as a really good game, and I would love a sequel. I don't think there will be one, because they're focused obviously on like Elden Ring and all that.
Yeah.
But just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And those are mine. No movies, but video games and books, because that's all I do at this point.
Right on.
Nice.
Well,
this has been a good one.
It's been a really fun episode. Long
had a good
one,
time.
but
I'm
fun
kind of
episode.
sad we didn't get to talk about my two favorite films, Alien and Aliens, but constraints of time. And I thought T2 was more relevant.
Yeah. Well, maybe
we'll have you on again at one point and do an episode.
I actually haven't. I've seen Alien, and I know I've seen bits and pieces of Aliens. I'm not sure if I've seen it all the way.
I've seen all of it.
I watched 5 movies over again in preparation for this. I watched T1 and 2, Dark Knight, and then Alien and Aliens. In fact, I just finished Aliens right before coming over here. Nice. But they are making a new Alien movie. It's not supposed to be attached to any of the currently existing ones, which is great because I think Ridley Scott has lost his mind. But
Prometheus
and Alien Covenant, that's just another example of franchises. But
Aliens 3 was kind of wild, if I remember correctly.
There was a lot of that was kind of like a too many cooks in the kitchen situation.
Is that the one where
they're in the prison?
Which is the one? Maybe which is the one where she
She's
is
a clone.
The mother of an alien?
That's Resurrection.
So isn't that the one where the alien gets sucked out the tiny hole?
Yeah, the newborn.
So that one gave me nightmares as a child. So thank you for that.
How old were you when you saw that movie, Jeremiah?
Younger than I should have been.
So that one's that Alien has totally gone the way of most other large franchises where the latest movies are just trash, but there is some truly disturbing stuff in Resurrection. That's the fourth one. Yeah. So, yes. Totally.
My mom really liked these movies.
That's also a guilty pleasure. My mom's kind of a normie, but she exposed me to a lot of just great classics when I was really young. Mm-hmm. Like, Jurassic Park, Terminator, all that stuff. But that's one, yeah. But so the working title is Alien Romulus. Apparently it's not attached to any currently existing Alien movies. It's going to be its own thing. It started filming, I want to say 2 weeks ago.
Is it really got attached?
No. It's born from an idea, this director named Fede Alvarez. He made the Evil Dead remake, which I enjoyed.
Evil Dead's always really good.
Yeah. Apparently this came from an idea that he pitched to Ridley Scott like over a decade ago. Yeah. But at the time, Ridley Scott was really invested in his terrible prequels. And so just, I guess, in the last couple years, Ridley Scott reached out to him and was like, hey, you still want to make that Alien movie?
And, I need money.
and Fede was like, yeah, for sure. So that's what they're making. And because it's not attached to any pre-existing movies and it's a different director, I have cautious optimism. So since it's starting filming now, I imagine we'll see it early next year, middle of next year, maybe. I don't know timeline of.
That's possible. Maybe the year after, depending on how big it is.
Yeah. So there will be new stuff in the Alien franchise, but
it may be fun to talk about the Alien franchise, though.
Yeah, I'd be open really to at least
classic sci-fi stuff.
I've seen Prometheus. I don't want to talk about it, but. But as I've established, I'm not a big fan of scary stuff.
Me neither. Actually, seeing Prometheus, I did not know it was a prequel to Aliens.
I'm so sorry.
I did not know that until I was in theater, and I was like, "This is terrifying."
There's some good stuff in there, especially like some body horror stuff. But it's really bogged down by.
That's not good stuff. That's not good stuff.
It's really bogged down by just half-baked pseudo philosophy. But
yeah, I got that.
Part of the reason that I find Alien and Aliens so good and so compelling is that change of genre from horror to action. But if you guys ever have any interest in that franchise,
maybe do those maybe sometime.
I think they're old enough too where they're not like they're older enough too where like the horror aspect is still there, but it's not as bad as like newer. A lot of newer horror is just frightening.
Well, it's all jump scares now, but this Alien does a good job of creating tension and all that stuff. But 79 and 86 is when those movies came out. Yeah. But yeah, if you ever have any interest in that, they're near and dear to me.
Well, we'll have to do that.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you guys bringing me on. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, glad to have you on. We'll definitely have you on again. We like to have our guests reoccur.
Thank you. Sequels.
Yeah. Oh, we'll have a sequel.
All comes back.
We got to make it a good one, guys.
Yeah. Yes. We have to somehow develop your character.
I need to develop. I need to develop.
All right, everybody. Well,
as we like to say on the podcast, this has been a Bridge of Two podcast.
A far, far away bridge.
I'm touched. I love it. I love it. Hardship forms bonds.
Look, you and I, Josh.
Life. What hard thing have we gone through? We have no justification for this chemistry.